I just want to thank everybody for raising their hand and participating in Global Entrepreneurship Week.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the topic of Venice, because Venice is doing very bad, unfortunately. So they have crazy problems related with what is called over tourism. So too many tourists, right? I don't know if you know that starting from next year, they're going to have an entrance fee of €5, $5 to go to Venice. If you want, it's going to become like a museum with a big debate with the locals saying, okay, we are officially like Disneyland right now. Yeah. So the problem is that, okay, an entrance, first of all, an entrance ticket, I think we can agree, of $5 is not going to stop people to go. Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to say is that, though, this is what I called, and this doesn't work, what I call Band-Aid solution.
Why are you passionate about tourism? I mean, did it impact like the community that you grew up in? Like, is there a story there that you can share?
Absolutely. I'm Italian, as you probably understood. I'm Italian, born and raised in Italy in a small town close to Milan. When I was 5, my dad moved to Padua, which is close to Venice, and then he started working in Venice. So I was going every weekend to the Venice area. We were going around to museums, to the coast. So tourism has always been part of my DNA, traveling. And I really liked it. And then I fell in love with the concept of I want to really to analyze the relationship between the entertainment industry, and tourism.
Now we're officially live. Here you go, Dave. Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for your patience as we kind of get sorted over here. Good morning. How's everybody doing today?
Great. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing fantastic, and I'm super excited to be joined by all of y'all on another Saturday. What better thing to do on a Saturday morning than get together and talk about business and try to find ways to support each other? Am I right?
This is the real hustle, right? This isn't the bank holiday.
No. For sure. Well, some new faces here. My name's Elias Benjaloon, and I get to work here at Nevada Partners as an entrepreneur in residence. My role is really about fostering entrepreneurship and creativity, and I'm really thankful for this space that we have here. It's the Westside Community Incubator. It was made possible by UNLV and Visa and several other partners. And I'll let Dave kind of introduce himself and what we've got going on next.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Dave Berlin. I know almost everybody. Nice to see a few familiar faces as well. So when people ask me what I do, I generally say a lot. So a couple of things. I'm very big on my passion is for the community. So my goal is to connect the people of Las Vegas so together we can show the world who we really are. And I do that in a few different ways. One, I'm the state coordinator for Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is a series of events that we host in November. We'll talk a lot about that. So I'm always catalyzing and creating partnerships and strategic plans that we can really get more and more people involved in that. Even though it's in November, it takes a lot of work throughout the year to make that happen. I'm also the program manager for entrepreneurship for Vets in Tech. A lot of my stuff all has to do in the veteran world, which tees up what we're doing here for Freedom Week. This is the first event of Freedom Week. Freedom Week is a series of events, kind of like a mini Global Entrepreneurship Week. I may have done that on purpose. But the idea is to celebrate a lot of the veteran organizations that are here in Las Vegas, primarily the veteran entrepreneurship organizations. I truly believe that not every veteran is homeless. Not every veteran needs a job. Not every veteran, is broken. And with that, there's a lot of programs that happen on that side of what I call like post-traumatic stress that deal with that side of transition. And then on the post-traumatic growth side, education, entrepreneurship, and employment are the things that I really like to shine a light on and focus on so we can help really bring those things together. And this is the first event of Freedom Week, which will be a series of events all the way from now until next Saturday.
Awesome. And if it's okay with folks, if you're a veteran, would you mind to raise your hand just so that we can get a feel of the room? That's amazing.
Hold on, do it again one more time, just for the photo op for Surreal in the back. There we go.
All right.
I love that. High five. Perfect.
Well, that's lovely, and we want to thank you for your service. A big part of what we're going to do later this week is we're opening up this library behind us, and we're going to call it the Veteran Entrepreneurship Library. We're going to be naming it after two veterans who've committed, who've dedicated 20 years plus service into this community. But this is also becoming the set of it's essentially our stage for a documentary / podcast series where we want to highlight the stories of veterans who've made an impact in the community here in Southern Nevada. And so we've got the illustrious Clay T. White with us today. Clay T. is in the back, and she's the director of oral research at UNLV. And she's going to be joining us in helping document these stories. And so if you're interested in sharing your story with us, to have that be submitted to UNLV Archives and also be a part of our podcast series, please speak to her, to me later today, and we'll love to get that scheduled. Our library is opening up Thursday, July 11th. And so that's later this week, and we hope you guys can come join us for that. For the rest of today, I'm going to really pass the floor over to Dave and our veteran entrepreneurs that are helping us host the conference. We've got some back-to-back workshops. And then at lunch, we've got Annie's Kitchen. Annie's Kitchen was actually founded by a veteran as well, an Air Force veteran who has since passed, but his wife and family continues to run the restaurant, and she's going to be delivering a bunch of barbecue for us later today. So I hope you stick around for that much.
Oh man, remind me to update my post and add that on there.
Awesome.
That's great.
Well, I'm going to move over to technical background support.
Perfect.
And I'll let you rock and roll with Why Networking.
And I don't know if you want to, are you streaming?
Yeah.
Cool. If you want to add my thing on there, you can.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's possible.
It's a little late.
It's too late. All right. Grab my water here.
And folks, we are live streaming. So the purpose of the live stream is we're sharing this on our YouTube channel. But if you want a moment after we do this workshop, we'd love to give folks an opportunity to kind of present and come share what you're working on. And just know that we're live on YouTube. And then what we'll do is we'll put it into Opus clips and create a bunch of social media content and share that with you guys so you can share it on your own channels as well. Oh, yeah, it's Entrepreneurs News Network, or it's ENN-Global.
Do I slide change it, or do you?
Oh, I'll slide change.
Okay, cool. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to stand in this little pocket right here. Right? Am I good visually? All right. All right, guys. So quick little tip for those of you that are trying to build a network. I'm going to fly through a lot of this stuff because I want to jump to the end. I want to give plenty of time for you guys to engage at the end. But what's funny is I put this slideshow together whenever I did the presentation on this very topic called Why Networking. And we're going to talk about the core element of that, and it's networking versus prospecting. So we'll dive into that. Just a little bit about me. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I've had the honor to rock some pretty cool stages. The first public talk that I ever did was actually leveraged through my network. I set the audacious goal back in 2013 to do a TEDx talk. And I set the goal for 10 years. So that would have been last year. Actually, it happened in 14 months. And that was my first public talk. So the biggest lesson I've learned is always have a 5-minute, a 15-minute, and a 50-minute keynote, at the ready. So this one, what you're going to learn today is the whole idea of networking versus prospecting. We'll talk a little bit overall, as this is a part of a series. Some of the other stuff I teach about is going to be selling, how to leverage community building, and the power of live events. But today we're really going to dive deep on networking versus prospecting. Okay. So, how many people here have ever been to a networking event? Okay. Keep your hands up if you really enjoy networking events. Okay. Now, keep your hands up if you came here to this conference today to leverage the power of relationships. Now, keep your hands up if you want to be sold something and you want to spend money with your credit card today. So here's the funny thing, right? A lot of times people go to these events because they want to build relationships, and oftentimes they get stabbed with a business card and people try to sell them something, or they try to set you up for that one-on-one conversation, and ultimately that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to try and flip that. So to me, I believe that networking is not prospecting, okay? Now, I'll tell you a couple fun stories, right? All my stories are true, and you're on my side. Just remember that, okay? So um this is just a little quick timeline of my background. It changed a lot, right? In 1998, I was very much at-risk youth. We'll just say that that's when I had my first business. We're not going to talk about that. Then 2000, I decided to change that trajectory. I became a United States Marine. And then I decided after my service in the military to pass that on to the next generation. And I became a drill instructor at Thunderbird Youth Academy. And I worked with at-risk youth for about 6.5 years. Okay. After that, I decided to begin a family. I got married. I had a second full-time job as an electrician. That does come into play. And then that's actually what led me to becoming a wedding DJ in 2010. Since that time, I've DJ'd about 750 weddings all over the United States. I've helped many people in the industry of the wedding world grow their businesses. And along the way, everything has been built on relationships. All right. And then it all started with the idea that one connection can change everything. And I can tell you right now, it was April 19th, 2013. I was in Oklahoma City at an EntreLeadership conference with Dave Ramsey, and a guy named John Acuff spoke. And he talked about his book, Start, Punch Fear in the Face, Escape Average, and Do Work That Matters. And when he stood up there and talked, there's something really fascinating in my life that happened. He made me laugh and he made me cry. And in that same setting, once you have that opportunity where you can make somebody laugh and you can make somebody cry in that same sitting, you really have somebody's attention and they have the capability to do something truly special, right? So I hope that you laugh today at least. And if you cry, that's okay too. But I'll give you guys action items on what you can do to make an impact in yours. So one connection can change everything. I remember watching John Acuff speak. That's John. I remember watching him speak and I said, one day that guy's going to be my friend. And in a really long story made very short, that person right there is John Acuff, and he's actually the reason why I moved to Las Vegas. So next slide. As you guys know, the whole idea behind the Veteran Entrepreneur Library is because I think books are probably the most powerful thing that we have. There's all kinds of social media and things like that, but there's something very interesting about books is you can never tell what books are on somebody's shelf unless you see it. Like I'm the kind of person where I can look from very far away and I can see by the color, by the side of the book, and by the font, I can tell what book it is almost from 50 feet away. Right? Because all of these books are books that have made a very important impact in my life. And those are books that I want to share. Those are just a few that have helped get me here. Next slide. And then, as I mentioned, all of these relationships and all of these books led me to do my first public talk. We set the crazy audacious goal when we visited Zappos in 2015 that we wanted to move from Oklahoma and be part of the Zappos family. And that story actually became very true. It happened a little differently than I hoped. That's a story for another time. But in 2017, I actually joined another team called Southwestern Consulting. And that's where I launched really becoming effective as a sales and leadership coach and taking everything that I've learned. And through all of this, I was networking, right? And I was going to all these different events and I was getting stabbed with business cards, right? But overall, I had this huge dream that I was going to help share my passion and my story for what I'd learned in building relationships, and share that with other people. And has anybody here ever read The Alchemist by any chance? Alchemist is one of my favorite books. I keep it in my bag all the time. If you want something, the universe conspires into helping you achieve it. So once you really set that intention, it's already happened in the universe. You're just waiting to catch up with it. Okay. So in 2018, I drove a rental car one way. I left Tulsa and I came out here. But before I did, I hosted one event, and it was my first event that I called Why Networking. And I wanted to create a system and an idea of how relationships could be leveraged but I wanted to change the idea from networking into, from prospecting to networking, because a lot of times people feel like they're going to a networking event and they're actually in somebody else's prospecting, right? So I hosted that first event. The venue was given to me for free. It was $5,000. They also covered all the food. There was about 200 people that ended up coming. And in that, there are still connections that have been made from that event that have carried on to start and grow businesses. And there's actually been families that have been connected because of that event, because it came from such a true place, right? So hello, Las Vegas. I'm happy to share that I'm actually celebrating 6 years in Las Vegas from driving that rental car out here one way. And there's been a lot of really cool things that have happened since. But all of that started with the reality of where I moved to, right? I knew I was coming to Vegas. I moved to just right there at the edge of downtown, 13th and Carson. It was a little bit of a challenging reality for me because I was coming into this knowing that that my family was going to be going through a divorce because of the challenges that we went through in the transition to come here. So that was a very sobering experience. So more than ever, it was going to be based on the relationships that I could make while I was here. So I started to immediately engage and build in the community, right? My favorite thing besides books is building community. So one of the first programs that I started was the Bunker Labs chapter here in Las Vegas. Is anybody here familiar with Bunker Labs? Right? Some of you guys had went through the program. Who's been through a Bunker Labs program? 3? Awesome. So the whole idea for Bunker Labs is it's very focused on entrepreneurship for veterans. So I helped start the chapter here in 2019. I was a volunteer for that program all the way up until last year in 2023. Somewhere in the middle of that, we had a thing that changed the world. How many people here remember the pandemic? Right? Yeah, right. Let's just erase that from our head. Well, the cool thing about the pandemic is a lot of people really took that as an opportunity. And if I really want to rewrite that story, there was a lot of really challenging things that happened. But in a way, it leveled the playing field here in Las Vegas as it did in many communities. And I believe that for all the people that were entrepreneurs, those people hung up their hats and started drinking every day. Right. And for the people that really wanted to make an impact, this is where we saw the opportunity to step up. Right. I feel like in a way we were promoted in the community because whenever a pandemic was over, everyone had a new place of where they were starting from. I decided to start a podcast, and I learned the power of podcasting and the power of building networks. Even though I only shared about 25 episodes during that time, I had no intention when I started that podcast. It was just to have conversations with the people that had motivated me in business, talk to some of those mentors, some of those incredible speakers that had poured into my life. And there's some phenomenal conversations that I had, but some of those conversations since then, 4 years ago, have now resulted in 6-figure partnerships with some of the people that I'm working with today. So that was with no intention. There was no sell. There was no action item. It was just genuine conversations, but that started to build the community. And from that, I started a project in 2021 called Pursue Vegas. And that was a way to capture all of the things that were happening in Las Vegas in this new Las Vegas post-pandemic. Next slide. So I have a mission and a vision, and I shared that a little bit as we talked about the intro. My mission is to connect the people of our city so together we can show the world who we really are. It's funny because I actually wrote that mission statement on a project that I was doing in Tulsa. And it's funny because when I started to share that here, everyone's like, oh my God, I love that. And it's just something really cool. When somebody asks what you do, when you say this, their shoulders just kind of relax because, you know, one of the most challenging questions that you can ask when you're trying to build a relationship with somebody is when you say, what do you do? You may unknowingly be giving them permission to sell you. Because they're like, here's what I do. And they start asking their program questions. And before you know it, now you're in their pipeline, you're a numbers game. And they're like, I'm going to be able to set an appointment with this person. I'm going to be able to get them or trick them into having lunch with me. And at the end of that lunch, that's where I'm going to be able to get their credit card. So whenever I say this, shoulders roll back and people feel a little bit more at ease. And that's where I try to help people really understand what a powerful mission statement can be for them to remove that friction. In 2022, this led to me being part of 2 incredible organizations. And this is a fun photo. I had 14 billboards across Las Vegas in 2022. These were given to me for free. Right. And it's because I was promoting 2 very big events that were going to, in my belief, change the trajectory of where Las Vegas was going as a community. One was the Military Connected Summit, which was part of the Military Influencer Conference. And the other was Global Entrepreneurship Week. They were both happening within the same month. And it was a very powerful opportunity to share what was going on. And when the opportunity came, somebody reached out to me, a good friend of mine, and she said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I see you promoting all this stuff. Can I just give you a couple billboards?" And I'd never done a billboard before, but the only way that I could communicate what I was trying to do was to take one of my favorite book titles, Find Your Why, and put it on a t-shirt and basically just hold up both of the things that I was trying to present to the community. So that's a fun photo, but that actually helped a lot of people get connected to what was going on. And through all of this, I kept seeing the same conversations happen, right? So we all raised our hands. We love networking. And how many people here have a business? How many people have a business that you need to sell your services, or you represent somebody else's company that you need to sell your services? Right? Prospecting is very important, but oftentimes these things get jumbled together. So I found this simple discovery, as I find most of my discoveries. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. I'm trying to find the answers. And the most incredible answer that I ever found of the difference was the first place I feel like you should look. If you ever get like you're challenged with trying to find the answer to something, we have this really powerful resource. It's called the dictionary. I literally went, well, what's the difference? I knew there was a thing and I was trying to be clever. And let me just add to that. There's always a time to be clever. There's a time to be cute, but there's also a time to just be radically clear and convert or communicate, right? So I went to the definition of networking. The definition of networking is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. Right? That's the simplest version. Now we're going to elaborate on that, but that's like the simplest version versus prospecting. Prospecting is the activity of searching for something, especially prospective or likely customers or clients, typically in the sales process, right? So what I learned is you have this whole thing that's a sales process. How many people here have ever like read a book about sales or teach sales or learn something about sales? Right? Almost every process, whether you're talking Grant Cardone, whether you're talking Southwestern Consulting, any other sales processes out there, or anybody that you guys listen to or follow? What was it? Oh, yeah. Gap method, fanatical prospecting, all of these generally have a system, and they're going to tell you that the system starts here and goes here. Well, I looked at that and I was like, if I'm going to like ever go up against this and challenge it with something like networking, I have to have a process too. Slide. So what if I told you that networking isn't about getting the next invoice or the next sale? What if I told you that networking is about unlocking infinite opportunities in every person you meet? Right? So I'll talk about the when you talk about the principles of why networking, it's first to understand that networking is not prospecting, right? But how can I talk about networking without a process, right? So you've got to have something. Anytime that you want to challenge, you have to meet something to the same level, and then you have to elaborate on what the difference is, right? So instead of having a process, I've created principles. So just like your process might start with prospecting, appointment setting, presentation, handling objections, closing, handling more objections, and then getting the sale, right? That's a typical sales cycle. Well, I don't want to have a process for networking. I believe in principles, right? So in that same thing, this is, if you're taking any notes, I'm going to ask you to write these down. The principles of why networking are to show up, serve, share. I want you to think synergy all the time. Smile, right? And I say smile because I have what's called resting Marine face. And a lot of times, cue that laugh. We did good. We got him to laugh. See if we can get him to cry. I often get this very serious look on my face, and I can become very unapproachable. Right? So, now, and then stop looking. That's my favorite one. So if you look at these principles are what I believe can help you create infinite opportunities in every person you meet. This is not sales. This is not prospecting. This is networking, because a lot of times people are going to argue that it's a numbers game, and we'll talk about that as well. Slide. So let's talk about show up. First of all, you guys have all done that today. Congratulations. Welcome to level 1. Showing up is a big part of it. How many people thought about not coming today? It's okay. We all do. Right? It's Saturday. It's Saturday of a holiday weekend. We can always come up with all the excuses, as many people did, right? But you guys showed up, and with that, you guys have already started in the process to unlock infinite opportunities in every person you meet today, right? Number 2 is to serve. You can volunteer. You can help set up the room, right? When you go to an event, I typically, as a good Marine, I'm the first person to everything, right? And I'm just there to help. I'm normally the last person to leave. That was something that I embodied in my spirit for whenever I worked in weddings. I was the last person to leave. I would always help put up chairs and things like that. You can clean up. You can introduce people, connect the dots. When you're going to an event, I want you to set an intention. If you are a connector, then go with the intention. I will help one person meet somebody that they need to meet today, right? Whatever that opportunity to serve is for you, I want you to always think about that as your superpower, and how can you leverage your superpower at every event. Next is to share, right? I'm going to teach you one little fun trick, and there might be another slide for it. If you want to build really professional relationships, become an amateur photographer. Become an amateur photographer. Some of the ways that I've met some of the most powerful authors on the planet, or some of the best speakers, or the people that have poured into me, is I stand up in the back. This is very important. I take pictures from the back of the room, because you could stand right here and take a photo of me, and it looks like I set up this fun thing where I'm just talking to nobody, right? But if you take a picture from the corner of the room of somebody speaking, take a picture of the corner of the room, especially when you see that there's no one taking photos, send that to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I really loved your talk. Be genuine. I really liked how you shared this one point. By the way, I took some photos. I hope you could use those for social media or something like that. And they'll be like, oh my God, thank you so much. They won't say thank you for not taking the photo right at the front, but they mean it. I promise you, because so many people have taken that photo. It's like if Elias took a photo of me right now, it's going to look like I faked this whole thing, right? But if Surreal's taking a photo in the back, especially with people with their hands up engaged, right? Cue your hands up engaged. There's a test photo right there. See what I'm saying? That's a photo that's going to help them say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And you know what they're most likely going to say? How can I help you? What are you working on? This is how I ended up working with Simon Sinek's team. I just sent an email and I asked a question. And I was like, hey, I want to quote Simon Sinek in this TED Talk. Is that okay? I was asking for permission. And that ended up me working with the Simon Sinek organization and teaching people how to discover their why, because they were just genuinely interested in what I was working on. Okay. The next is synergy. So the thing about sales is generally your sales process is a very short-term thing. You might have clients that last for a long time, but when you're thinking sales, that's a short-term interaction. I just need to figure out how to get this person to come into my pipeline and sell them. That's very short-term. Synergy is thinking long-term, right? It's the interaction or cooperation of two organizations to produce a combined effect greater than the sum of those. So if I can take my whole world and John's whole world, and if we fuse those together, that's something greater than the two people. Don't forget, smile. Back in the Marines, because you want to be approachable, right? So many people have told me when I smile, I look like Joe Coy, and I think that's hilarious because I say Joe Coy looks like me. Finally, shop local. This is the most important thing that you can do. How many people here order stuff from Amazon? We all do it. How many people here order stuff from Uber Eats, or you go to a chain restaurant like Wendy's or something like that, right? We all do it. It's okay. I want to talk about Amazon because Amazon is always going to have stuff. It's going to be cheaper, and a lot of times they're going to get it faster. But I promise you, Amazon is not going to be there when something happens in your life, and they don't even care. My kid gets into a car wreck, Amazon doesn't know. But if I've always shopped with Jason, or if I've always went to a local restaurant and they find out that my son was in a car wreck, what do you think the odds are of them sending a bunch of food to my house to get through that challenging period in our life? That's something that Amazon will never see or never do. And one time I had a project that I was going to do, and I was going to order this poster off of Amazon, a custom poster that I turned somebody into a movie poster. And I actually shop local. And it's funny, that's where this principle came to life. When I shopped local, that's a business that serves other businesses. And I was immediately connected to 500 other companies. And as soon as I did that poster, he's like, "Why are you building this? What is this for?" And I told him, he's like, "You should meet 7 other people." So shop local. It means something. How many people have a local owned business and it's important every time somebody swipes their credit card or buys something from you? It matters. Okay. So here's how you put these two things up against each other. You have networking versus prospecting. We just talked about all the principles. Your sales process is probably going to be something like prospecting, qualifying, a discovery meeting, a presentation, a close, handling objections, and then referrals. Does anybody else have a sales process similar to that? Pretty spot on, right? So all I'm trying to say is networking is not prospecting. And a lot of people are going to say that it's a numbers game and to always be closing. No, always be connecting, right? You got to meet them where they're at. I can't just fight them. I got to meet them right where they're at. So it's the same ABC. It's always be connecting, right? And this is a great example of the first time that I ever hosted a book club group. I was always hosting book clubs. I love books. This is a book club that I hosted at 5:00 on Friday mornings back in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was before I left. There's 5 people in that group that still meet today, right? That's the power of building community, and that's the difference from prospecting. So some people are going to say it's a numbers game, and that's true. It is. In prospecting, let me guess, you talk to 100 people, 20 of those people might care. 5 appointments is going to equal 2 people, right? Has anybody else seen that same? Does anybody else have a similar numbers game? Well, what about the 98 people? What about the 98 people that you didn't sell? You have now probably closed off every opportunity to ever be a friend, be a resource, or any of that stuff because you did what everybody else did. You tried to stab them with the business card, and that's where it really does make a difference, okay? What if I told you that every person that you meet is 100 opportunities? Now, I'm going to get a little woo-woo on you, right? Because I believe in the ways of the Tao, right? I'm at peace, right? Flow like water. What if I told you every person you meet is worth 100 opportunities in the universe in quantum time? Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. My coach, who poured into my life, and I'll probably cry whenever I say this, she told me we always get paid for the work that we do. Often, soon, sometimes later, but always eventually, right? So some of these things will not. I've had people that I had a conversation with 8 years ago that will send me a message on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, are you still in Las Vegas? There's somebody that's coming to a conference next week. You need to meet them." And every time I meet them, it unlocks a whole world of opportunities, right? And why did that happen? Because I didn't stab them with the business card. If I tried to sell them something that I was selling at the time, they would be like, "Cool story, bro." And then the next time I tried to talk to them, next time it's like, "Sorry, Dave, I'm busy." Eventually, these things will happen. And trust me, people, like when I go to an event, I go to the event with intention. I cannot sell anything today. I don't care if you're hitting me with your credit card. I have nothing to sell today. But if you do reach out, I promise you are going into a sales pipeline when it is very clear that you have something to buy, and that will be something that you go through, but you're still a resource, right? So it's the networking versus prospecting. Every person that you meet is 100 opportunities that will come back and serve you. Okay, so it's a lot. I dropped that in like 14 minutes, 18 minutes. A lot of it was story. How many people feel like you're sipping through a fire hose and this is too much? Feel good? Well, let's keep rolling then. Here's how you can take action right now. Take a picture of this slide. Take a picture up here of me speaking about this slide. I'll even pose. Right? Or this one right here. Which one is it? That? That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. So this is gonna be so simple. Find events, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff. Share those events on social. How many times? Like, I'm working on this big event coming up. It's with a new group that I've never done an event for. They were freaking out a week ago because we had 30 RSVPs. Dave, this event's in like 10 days. What's going on? I'm like, trust me, everybody here, they wait until the week of. There's 50 events going on every day. About 15 really good events that are very specific to whatever we're into. It's hard to make people's schedules, and a lot of times that schedule can change. I said, I promise you, all the RSVPs are going to come in. I looked last night, it came up. They sent the preliminary numbers for July 11th. By the way, Jason's helping out with that event. It was like 45 2 days ago. I saw it this morning. It was 115. 115 people are coming to one of the most important events that I've ever hosted in this community. It's on July 11th. It's at DraftKings, and it's going to be a panel discussion to teach veteran entrepreneurs and all entrepreneurs ways that they can get funding for their business, right? It's at the DraftKings headquarters. Chase Bank is sponsoring it, and they were freaking out because we only had 40 RSVPs. And I said, I promise it's gonna start to take off. But you got to find events. How many people have seen an event that you just know you need to go to, but you absolutely can't? Guess what? It's okay to still share that event. You know what the biggest currency is here as a local business owner? When somebody shares my content. I don't even care if you buy something from me. If you share it and somebody else gets that information, that's a win. How much did that cost? Nothing. Cost you about 14 seconds. You really want to go the extra mile? And I started to do this. Even if I can't go to something, I will buy 2 tickets. Because then guess what I get to do? I get to give those tickets. Elias, I can't go to this thing, bro. I bought you a ticket. That removes the barrier of him like, gosh, Dave, I don't know, man. It's $50. Like, it's not that he doesn't have $50. It's just that he has to make decisions that are going to be pertinent. Dude, there's somebody at that event that I really think you should meet. I went ahead and bought you a ticket. What did I just do? We'll pretend it's your event. I just bought a ticket for your event. I just made sure that Elias is coming. And then I gave him the extra ticket so he could take Surreal, and Surreal could be in the back nailing the photos and videos. Is that a win? That's a win. Offer to help however you can, right? Those are some ways that you can take action, all right? Still seems too hard. You guys are on point because you're here at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, so I know this isn't too hard, but here's some other ways. Bonus ways to connect. This is my favorite. Next. Take a few of your favorite books. Let's see. I'm going to take this one here. I'm going to take this one here. I'm going to take this one here and this one here. Right? So I'm going to, when I'm at a restaurant, I just leave those where I'm working on something. I just leave that as a little billboard. If I'm meeting somebody for coffee, I'll leave those on the desk or on the table. My hope is that somebody interrupts us. We can be in the most deep conversation, and I want somebody to come over and interrupt us and say, "Oh my God." And I'm not going to cuss, but I love it when people cuss. I love it when people say, "Oh my gosh, I effing love John Acuff. That book changed my life." There's no way that people that are walking by know all these books that are on the shelf. But if they see that and they connect with it, that's a person that I want in my life. that's you're asking for permission to connect with people. So that's a bonus way to connect. Next. This is probably one of my favorite people on the planet. I met him at a conference that I spoke with, and he taught me 3 very powerful questions, because a lot of times people don't know what questions to ask, right? I promise you, go to a networking event and ask somebody what they do and see if you end up at a lunch 2 days later and they're trying to sell you. It'll happen. Instead, I want you to learn how to ask human connection questions, right? And this is what I want to share with you guys, and we'll have a little bit of time to do this, right? What pisses you off? What breaks your heart? What problem are you trying to solve? I'm gonna use that as an example. You guys know my passion for veterans, right? The one thing that pisses me off is every time that somebody talks about veterans and it only being the conversation of homeless veterans, suicide, needing jobs, broken, VA claims. I get all that stuff as a challenge. I promise I do. But that's not the only conversation. And it breaks my heart every time I hear about a veteran who loses their way because they didn't know that there were other resources out there. So the problem I'm trying to solve is I'm trying to connect the people of our community and show the world who we really are. And with that, I'm trying to bring the veteran community together, and I'm trying to change that conversation from a conversation that leads to those as a result, right? I'm trying to create 2 lines, one for post-traumatic stress, one for post-traumatic growth. And I'm trying to change the narrative, because I don't believe that veterans are in transition. I believe that they're in an expansion. And if we start to change the words around that challenge, we start to change the behaviors. And that's where we really start to change lives. So another way to just stand out. You can't take this, but I like to take boom boxes and walk around with them. It tends to stand out, and people are like, why are you carrying the boom box? Just wanted to make friends. See if I can get people to just randomly dance on a corner in Las Vegas, and it happens all the time. So be remarkable or be invisible, right? That's just another way to stand out and build connection. And with that, I think we're coming up on the end, and I have, so these are just a few of the incredible people that not only have made a very big impact in my life. These are some of the authors, some of the people like Tony Hsieh. I met Jay Shetty. All these people are people that I've met, and somehow I tricked them into taking a photo with my boombox. And it's funny because these people meet a lot of people. The funniest one is Jen Sincero, right? She wrote, "You're a badass. You're a badass at making money." What's funny about her is I met her at a book signing, and then I saw her again 3 years later, and I said, "Hi." I said, "You probably don't remember me. I saw you at the Wichita book signing." And of course, she's filing at Wichita. I remember that. Okay, yeah. I was like, "Yeah, I had the boombox." She goes, "Dave." For somebody who meets a lot of people, you got to stand out just a little bit, right? So that's just a little bonus. So the last thing I'll leave you with is going to networking events is an evolution of your network growing. You can go and attend these things, and that's great. But at some point, if you want to take your relationships to the next level, it's not just attending events, it's being parts of a mastermind. It's sponsoring events. Where it really gets to be cool is when you start to host your own events, right? That's where you really start to build connection, or you start to build your own community online. There we go. Photo op, right? I'll do a candid one too. So it's one of those things where you're going to get to the point where you want to build a community, or you want to launch a mastermind, right? Or you want to lead existing organizations. You want to launch and grow a podcast. All of these ways are ways that you can intentionally build and grow your network, but it starts by showing up, serving, sharing, thinking synergy, smiling, and shopping local. Cool. Any questions about what we've talked about? And then I have a little bit of a hands-on experiment for all of you guys. Any questions?
Where'd you get the boombox idea?
So the boombox idea, so that's a whole story, my friend, but I'll tell you, it's funny. I bought my first boombox in 2001, right before I went on my first deployment with the military. And I took it with me on ship, and I took it around the world. And I was like up on the flight deck when we had like barbecues and stuff, I was playing music. And I didn't realize this, but like after that's turned into this whole thing, that then I bought more boom boxes, and it's been this fun thing for me. What's interesting is like I have this big, hairy, audacious goal. Like I set the one for TED Talks. Next year, as I've left the wedding business, now I want to DJ cruise lines and I want to DJ Virgin Voyages. And I realized it was a seed that was planted 24 years ago. It's like now I'm like, oh, I was rocking the top of a military warship. Now, like I'm going to be riding Virgin Voyages like a surfboard and just playing music off into the sunset. Cool. Any other questions? Perfect. Yes.
How do you break the ice when you are going into networking? You're saying that you do not prospect, but you actually go and network. So how do you break the ice when you walk up and not present yourself with a card?
Yep.
But then
Perfect. Great question. Her question was for the recording, how do you break the ice and not ask a question like, what do you do? That feels like you're immediately starting into prospecting. Great question. It's all in the questions that you ask. Now, I wouldn't immediately go to the question like those, what pisses you off, what breaks your heart, what problem you're trying to solve. I would not go to those immediately. I can, because I know how to navigate those conversations. But here's my favorite question to ask, and you can steal it. And this is the question that I have for all of you. Write this down. What are you excited about? It's such an easy question, and you'll like practice this. The next time you go to a networking event, what are you excited about? You'll just see them be like, wait, hold on. You didn't ask me what I do. I don't, it's funny because that's how you definitely, you don't just break the ice, you make them slip on it a little bit. And they're like, wait, what? No, generally, what are you excited about? And they're like, you mean in business? Like, however you interpret that question. And they're going to answer. And a lot of the times it's going to be something they really care about. Right. And then you kind of segue into those other ones. Right. So that's one part. Right. What are you excited about? Now, this is something, be ready to write down these answers. Right. Be ready to take notes right here. Please, everyone, what is your favorite question to ask that is not, what do you do?
My favorite question to ask is inspired by Tony Hsieh. It's if you have a magic wand, what would you do?
Ooh, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? Right? Great question. Write it down. This is the best part. You can steal everyone's questions right now because you want to be more equipped to go in. Because if you don't have questions in they say if you don't have arrows in your quiver, then you're going to have to borrow somebody else's. Right? So if you don't have the questions to ask, use somebody else's. There's no rules here. There's no rules that say you have to ask the question, what do you do? Like, because then you're going to end up at lunch 2 days later. They're going to be trying to slide you a little brochure saying, come to this thing, bring 5 friends. It's not multi-level marketing. It's Pampered Chef. Right? Thank you for laughing at that joke.
Sometimes I ask, what are the top 3 projects you're working on?
Top 3 projects you're working on. I love it.
I ask questions dealing with the surroundings.
Okay. Like where are they from, or like?
No, dealing with surroundings.
Okay, something at that event.
I find out a lot of times if you in certain areas, you can ask a question about the surroundings and not take them a whole new area.
I love that. I love that. A lot of times I'll ask the question like, hey, what made you come to this event? Or did you, or like, if you're at a birthday party, it's easy, right? It's like, oh, how do you know Josh, the birthday guy? Right? Or if it's one of the speakers, hey, have you ever seen this person speak before? Anything that is not, what do you do? All right. Any other favorite questions that you guys have?
What would you do if you hit the lottery?
Ooh, what would you do if they hit the lottery? I would call my best friend who does private security for Cyril Sandberg.
I have a question, Dave. How would I respond the what do you do question? Because I ran across that this whole week and I just like, I'm like, give me a minute because I have to count everything I'm doing. So
yeah, I run into the same thing. I used to say more than I should, and I realized that had a really negative connotation to it. So I stopped saying that. Now I say a lot, and I just say it with enthusiasm. I'm like, I do a lot, and they're like what? And then you can start to name one and kind of gauge your, like, there's always go with like the top 2, like start with those and just kind of gauge their response. But like, yeah, so here's what I'm really passionate about, and here's what I'm doing to support that. Mm-hmm.
What if you don't want to tell them what you do because they're looking at like your budget?
Yeah, that's fine. And that goes more into the prospecting side of that. And yeah, so if you, a lot of times, if you don't want to tell them what to do, there's ways that you can get really good at this. And it's just like, you could say, well, I'd love to share that, but what do you do? Like, you can just, it's called the boomerang. You just flip that back on them and you answer their question with another question. That's also a weird sales closing technique, but it's just a way that you can kind of put that back on them. All right, we're cutting into the next session. So we're going to put a pin in this, but we will have a little bit of time this afternoon. That's going to be more like a panel discussion and a freestyle. And then if it's good with Elias, I'll do like a quick little ninja change here. Everything that you guys are talking about is great. What I want to do is I definitely want to give Jason is next, right? I want to give Jason plenty of time for his presentation. So he's got some really cool stuff he's going to share. And then right after that, we have Mike Fox. And then right before lunch, I'll come back up. We'll prep everybody with kind of a fun networking activity that we can do through lunch that you can work on your stuff. And that's going to help bring us to the close of the afternoon. And we'll do kind of presentations for everybody and shape ways that we can really articulate and communicate what we do and how to apply that into a networking atmosphere. Sound good? Yeah. All right. Last chance for photos. Just kidding. All right. Do we need to take an intermission for a second, or what do we do? We're just going to bring Jason LeDuc up. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not scripted by any means, but I know Jason very well, and I invited him to speak today. So he's part of a lot of cool programs here in Las Vegas. What I love about Jason is he has a very calm, steady, powerful way to communicate, right? He's always consistent. He always shows up. He always raises his hands. He's always ready to engage. And he always says, yeah, let's do it. Right. I've watched him start his own podcast in the last couple of years. I was really grateful to be on his show. He talks with local entrepreneurs. He talks with a lot of people in the military and veterans space. And I'm excited because he's actually the chapter president for the program that I'm involved with, Vets in Tech. And he's here to help us find partnerships and solutions for programs and organizations that are looking to hire more veterans. And we're going to be helping a lot more veterans start and grow some pretty powerful businesses, right? So if you'll please join me in welcoming Mr. Jason LeDuc of LeDuc Leadership.
Will you get some pictures for me while I'm up here?
I bet in this cool room of people that just learned, we can
get a bunch of pictures, right? All right.
Do
Do you guys need me to talk into the microphone for the stream? Is that why I'm holding this?
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to mic you up instead?
No, that's fine. We're good. As long as you can hear me on your stream. Am I on here? Let me get my clicker ready. Make sure we're technically working. Oh, there we go. All right. We'll go back up. All right. It's great to be here. Dave, thank you for the kind words. I will be calm throughout this. I think it'd be weird if I came up and screamed like a maniac after that introduction. So today I'm going to talk about negotiation skills for entrepreneurs. What I do for my business is I do a lot of corporate training. I go into companies and I work with them on leadership, strategy, and getting their people ready to take on new challenges. One of the things I incorporate into and I do that with Boxable in North Las Vegas. I go back and do work with the Air Force. I'm a 20-year Air Force veteran. They bring me back a couple times a year to work with folks on things. What I like to do is incorporate, because I think it's so important to everything that we do, whether as entrepreneurs or in business or just in life, I like to incorporate negotiation skills into just about every workshop. Big picture strategy stuff, whether it's trying to create a more innovative culture in your company, whether it's new manager training. I try to incorporate negotiation skills into everything just because I think it's so important. And I'll talk a little bit about my journey on how I started to think this was so important in a minute, but I always like to start off with the question, what are we doing here? There we go. How comfortable are you with negotiating? Because in most groups, it's a mixed bag. Some folks are really comfortable with negotiation. Some folks are not comfortable with negotiation. So if you would, my thing is not coming up here. Oh, you know why? because we are not. So I have this really cool thing where you scan a QR code and you enter in, on a survey, except we don't have the website loaded up on your computer. It's loaded up on my computer. So show of hands, who is really comfortable with negotiating? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who is, you can put them down. I can remember a couple numbers in my head at once. Who is kind of comfortable with negotiating? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to make that easy. Who is very uncomfortable with negotiating? Well, you were kind of comfortable with negotiating, but that's okay. I think because we all have kind of a love-hate relationship with negotiating. And when we think of negotiating, we think of that used car salesman scenario, right? We think of that transactional kind of relationship. And we'll talk about those kinds of relationships as we're talking today, but negotiation doesn't need to be that way. I first got involved with negotiation as a formal concept when I was working on my MBA at UNLV, and I was in the entrepreneurship track at UNLV. And we were required to take a negotiation course as part of that track. And I was really nervous about taking this course because I didn't think I was good at negotiation at all. Those transactional buy and used car kind of situations really terrified me. And I was convinced I was going to fail this class. And so for months, the whole summer leading up to taking that class, I was really worried about how well I was going to do in that class. And I found out once we get into negotiation class, that negotiation is really about more than that transactional kind of relationship, that buying a used car kind of relationship in business, in entrepreneurship, when we're working with strategic partners, when we're trying to grow something in a community, whether it's our business or something like Dave's trying to do, or the things that they're trying to do here at Promise Startups and Nevada Partners. There's a kind of negotiation where we're looking for win-win situations. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Does that sound good to folks? Is that something you'd like to be a part of? Great. So, as we go into this, and normally this is the 1 hour version, a little less than 1 hour version of a course I do over the course of 4 hours. And then there's a follow-up course that's 6 hours long. So we're going to do some really basic foundations of negotiation stuff. There are 6 foundations of negotiation. Most of what I do my work off of is based on this book, Bargaining for Advantage by Richard Schell. Normally, before you come into this class, we would have you do an assessment from this book that talks about your own bargaining style. And we're going to talk about bargaining styles. If that's something you're interested in, I'll give you guys my contact information. You can email me or you can give me your contact information. I'll send you the bargaining style assessment. It's nice to know your own bargaining style, but what we're really going to talk about today when we get to bargaining styles, go ahead. Richard Schell, Richard Schell. Yeah, I don't have to be tied to here. This microphone's wireless. So it's called Bargaining for Advantage. It's a great book. This is the textbook we used in that UNLV negotiation class. So the important thing is recognizing others' bargaining styles, and we're going to get into that. But these are the 6 foundations of negotiation. This is the order they're normally taught in. But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to start with the last one. We're going to start with leverage. Why do you think we're going to start with leverage? Go ahead.
Because it starts with a position that you're in to be able to negotiate in the first place.
Okay, that's part of it. Go ahead. We'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah, there's an adrenaline factor. We're going to talk about how to use the way the human brain works to set yourself up for success going into these negotiations, whether they are transactional or whether they are these win-win kind of situations we're talking about. So maybe let me back up a bit. What do you think leverage is before we talk into why I'm starting with it? Go ahead, ma'am.
Essentially putting in some effort and getting more return back.
So okay.
Putting in a minimal effort for maximum
Yep.
return.
I'm an engineer, classical mechanics, right? You've got a fulcrum and you've got a lever and you put in a little effort on one end to get a lot of effort on the other, kind of in negotiation. What else? Opportunity. Yes, we are going to talk about how leverage is an opportunity. Any other thoughts on leverage?
Yeah, you got to have a goal in mind when you go into it.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about having a goal in mind too, and we're going to talk about how setting that goal, how you want to set that goal up to set yourself up for maximum success to get everything you want out of your negotiation. Go ahead, sir.
It's the thing or the feeling that's going to motivate whoever you're negotiating with to either adopt your way of, of seeing the deal, or to motivate. It's the thing that's going to motivate the other person that you're talking to.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Positioning.
Positioning, absolutely. Are you looking stuff up online?
No,
She is.
I was a contract.
Okay. So there's a couple things. A lot of this is going to sound like these very transactional kinds of negotiations, because that's how they're presented in a traditional teaching negotiation context. So one thing I want you to remember as we're going through this today, as entrepreneurs, as business people, the things that we're going to get the most out of negotiation is trying to get to those win-win situations. The language used in negotiation instruction is often very transactional. It's very much that I'm buying a used car situation. So I'm going to use some language that is going to sound like I'm trying to get you to go out and burn down the world and get everything you want. But this is really just to get some concepts across to you. So leverage, and the most important thing about leverage is it's not just about getting an agreement. It's getting an agreement on your terms, right? Who's ever gone and made an agreement that wasn't a good deal for them? Every hand in the room, right? Trust me online, that was every hand in the room. Every hand in the room, right? We've all gone through, for whatever reason, we've said fine, and it was an agreement on your terms. When we're thinking about leverage, leverage is about getting an agreement on our terms. That can still be a win-win situation. Don't get wrapped up in the kind of confrontational language of this. Leverage derives from your counterparts, the persons you're negotiating with across the table. It comes down to their needs and their fears. What do they need to get in their agreement? What are they afraid of if they don't get an agreement? We're going to come back to this later, but does that make sense? Leverage isn't about what you've got. It's not about what they've got. It's about what they need. It's about what you need on your side, what they're afraid of, what you're afraid of if you don't get an agreement. We'll get to more of that later. Leverage is dynamic. It's not static. You can walk in this room, sit across the table, and something could change in the 5 minutes you're negotiating with your counterpart that completely changes the dynamic of the leverage. This is really important to remember. If you've got a lot of leverage in a situation, this might be the right time to make the deal, because in 15 minutes, the world can change and you may not have the leverage you had when you walked in the door. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. This is the most important foundation of negotiation. That's why we start with this one. When you read this book, they'll tell you it's the most important foundation of negotiation, but they don't get to it like chapter 10. We start with leverage when we do this course because it's the most important foundation of negotiation. Remember, it's dynamic and it's about needs and fears and getting an agreement on your terms. That's what you want to think about. Who's this guy? Sun Tzu, that's right. Wrote The Art of War. When did he write The Art of War? I have not read that, but it's on my waiting list at the library. I can't wait to read it. It is about 500. It's about 700 BC. It's about almost 3,000 years ago. Sun Tzu writes The Art of War. What did Sun Tzu say? Sun Tzu said a lot of things. What did Sun Tzu say that pertains to what we're talking about today? He said kind of that. What else? Know yourself. Kind of. Come on, the veterans in the room know this stuff. All right, let me give it to you. He did say that, but that's not what we're talking about today. But that is good advice for what we're talking about today. Yourself. Back that for a minute. Sun Tzu didn't say you're going to win 100 battles. He says you need not fear the result of 100 battles if you know the enemy and you know yourself. This is about negotiation, right? This is about, or we can tie this to negotiation. We can tie this to negotiation on getting an agreement on our terms. Now, we may not get everything we want out of that, but getting an agreement on our terms, we need to know ourselves and we need to know who our counterpart is that we're negotiating at. Because if we don't, If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. Does that make sense in the context of negotiation? Especially when we talked about leverage?
Yeah.
Right? What did we talk about leverage? What do we need? What do we need to know about our counterpart when it comes to leverage? Needs and fears, right? Oh, I thought you were waving at me. Thought he was taking me off stage. Needs and fears, right? When it comes to leverage. So that's why we need to know our opponent. If we don't know what our opponent needs and what they fear, we're going to have a real hard time getting an agreement on our terms, getting to that not fearing the result of 100 battles. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle, right? If you go in unprepared, if you go in not knowing what it is you really want, how can you possibly get an agreement on your terms in a win-win situation with your negotiation counterpart? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Know your counterpart. Bargaining styles, we're going to talk about that in a second. What they want, right? And we talked about what they want in terms of two very specific things, needs and fears, right? Keep that in mind. What makes their lives better or worse? We're going to dig into it a little more deeply, but when you are in a negotiation, sometimes you want to dangle things that might make somebody's life a little better. Sometimes you might put out something that says, hey, if I can't get what I want, it's not going to be good for you, right? And not in a threatening sense, but in a, where we can get to a win-win situation, or maybe walk away from here not, making our lives harder. So, and then what norms or values do they respect? We're going to get to all of that stuff. But does that make sense, especially the making their lives better or worse part? Trying to get to a win-win situation. What we're trying to do is really, in a win-win situation, make all of our lives better. So we have to understand what that is with our counterparts. And of course, know it about yourself too. If you don't know it about yourself, you're going to have a real hard time getting to an agreement. Okay, bargaining styles. So as I said, normally we would have you guys do an assessment before you come in. We do a little poll where we get the demographics of what the different bargaining styles are. I'm just going to go through them with you, because the important thing about bargaining styles is knowing your own bargaining style is really important. And I encourage you guys to either get the quiz out of this book or get it from me, and you can take your own bargaining style. But in addition to knowing your own bargaining style, it's really important to know your counterpart's bargaining style. And we're going to talk a little bit about the bargaining styles and how you can recognize what someone's bargaining style might be. Okay, there are 5 of them. This is a chart normally given as a handout. Can get this to you if you'd like it. It's just a summary of what you're going to see on these slides. Don't try. I see you guys all trying to squint. Don't worry about it. We're going to get into it more. So, but there are 5 of them. I'm actually going to walk over here so I can see. They are competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. And here's the cool thing about bargaining styles. Just because you have one you naturally gravitate to, you will find that one, what that one is. You actually find out what the main one is and the secondary one is when you take the assessment. Just because you have a couple that you gravitate to, you can actually use tactics and techniques from any of these bargaining styles, depending on the situation. You are not stuck with your own bargaining style, and really sophisticated, experienced negotiators know how to adopt these styles and adopt the techniques from them, depending on their counterpart and depending on the kind of agreement they're trying to reach. We're going to get into all of them, okay? This is the first foundation of negotiation. So we jumped to the end because it was the most important, and now we're rolling back to the beginning because this is something we want to know about ourselves and we want to know about our counterparts. You ready? Yeah. All right. The first style, this is the competing style. This is the I'm selling a used car to you situation. This is the very transactional, I want to unload my used car. You need a car. I need money. Right? So, competing style negotiators, they have high energy. This is a really good style to use when the stakes are high. If it's really, really important that you get everything you need on your terms, you come in charging real hard with a competing style. They have strong instincts on leverage. Folks who are natural competitors when it comes to negotiation have very strong instincts on the idea of leverage, of understanding what someone's needs are and what someone's fears are. Now, competitive negotiators often overlook that there are non-quantitative benefits to negotiation, right? when you are negotiating with someone, and it's not just about money, it's not just about exchanging that used car for some money. Let's say it's something more complex, right? You're trying to bring in a strategic partner with your business, and you're going to talk about how you're going to share revenues or profits or whatever it is. What are some of the non-quantitative benefits that can come from this negotiation? The what?
Future collaborative, the quality of future collaborations. You know, if you've overwhelmed the person that you brought on, if you brought them to heel, they don't make for great partners, you know, down the line.
Yeah, that's the one that comes to my mind most of all in a business type situation when you're negotiating with someone over how we're going to do a collaboration, is that future relationship. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question on that, because it feels like the way sports negotiations go, you know, when they're trying to be competitive in squeezing out that last dollar from that contract, either side, it seems like they violate that. They overlook the non-qualitative, you know, the non-quantitative piece of it. You know, basically that player's morale going into that contract afterwards, and also they don't seem interested in, you know, they're not invested in the future relationship. If it does look like it's kind of a win-lose contract, I was wondering if I'm thinking about this in the right frame. In when you're talking about this competing style.
I don't know a ton about sports contract negotiation, but I see what you're saying, and I think it is very transactional. I don't think it was always that way. I think the last 15, 20 years or so, it's become that way, is that the athletes have become commodities much more so than the old days, to be traded, to be released, to all that kind of stuff. It seems that the teams, the front offices, are looking much more short term.
Right.
They're willing to outlay lots of cash to get something that may or may not be a good payoff in the long run. Maybe there may or may not be a lot of upside in the long run, but they're willing to outlay a lot of cash and a lot of promised cash in order to, in the short term, get them over here, get them on our team, and if it doesn't work out, we'll just trade them or let them go.
Right.
That's it's, you know, how many players do you see play for a single team their entire career anymore? Not many, right? I'm thinking mostly of the NFL. 5 or 6 teams is probably the norm now for you know, a middle of the road length career, right? Did you have a question, ma'am? Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I think that is a case where it's become very transactional, and this is because it's become very transactional, this is the style in sports contracts that's going on. So you use this style when you want to get to a deal quickly, when you want to unload that used car because it's leaking oil in your driveway, and you just want to get the cash for it, right? When you're not interested in the future relationship, again, the used car situation is a great one, right? You put an ad on Craigslist, you put something up on Facebook Marketplace, whatever it is, you just want this car gone. You don't care who gets it. All you care about is it's gone, and you get something in return for it, right? So buying a house, used car, ending a business relationship, if you are in a strategic partnership with someone, or you have a partner within your own business and you've decided it's time for the business to end, this is the style to use. I want out, you want out. Let's get to it, right? Questions on the competing style. This is the simplest one to understand. It's also the one we probably, except for these very transactional situations, want to use the least. Not saying that there's not a place for it, though. All right, collaborating style. Collaborators want to make sure everybody gets something out of the deal, which is really noble and really great. But because they're looking out for everybody's interests and not specifically focused on their own, it often can add a lot of complexity to the resulting agreements in the negotiation. So if you are someone who likes to collaborate with people, make sure that everyone gets something out of it. Make sure it's win-win for everybody. That's fantastic. Please keep doing that. That's a great way to approach things, but try not to let things get overly complex when you're documenting your agreements and putting together what your agreements are. Collaborators are also great at coming up with really creative solutions to a problem. So when you are in this situation, you want to make sure there are checks and balances. This is one where a relationship is going to go on for a long time in the future if you are using this kind of style. So you want to make sure there are checks and balances. Make sure that there are things that say, these are the kinds of behaviors we expect to see. These are the kinds of milestones we expect to meet. If they don't, this is what will happen. If they do, this is what will happen. What else is on here? Entering a business partnership. This is a great tactic to use. Mergers. This is like big business mergers and acquisitions kind of stuff, right? Who's watched that kind of stuff from the outside or been involved in a merger or acquisition of a company, right? Right. You wouldn't be merging if it weren't, short of hostile takeovers, right? You wouldn't be merging if there weren't mutual benefit in you, and you want to make sure you get the maximum of that mutual benefit, because otherwise, we've looked at a bunch of mergers over the last 20 years that didn't approach it this way, and they were nightmares, right? Who remembers Compaq and HP in the early 2000s, right? Collaborators want everyone to be involved. So you may not just be negotiating with one person across the table if you're working with a collaboration style negotiator. You may see lots of people around the table with lots of different interests. It's kind of like going to a meeting with Dave. Compromising style. This is where this is a style where you give a bunch of things up just to get to an agreement. That's okay sometimes. It sounds really bad at first, right? But if it's something you don't care about that much and you just want to get the deal done, make all the compromises you want, right? Stakes are low. It's something you just don't care about, right? What else? But if the stakes are low in the agreement, but the future relationship is important to you, right? I actually went through I can't get into the details of it, but I went through a thing a couple of weeks ago with this where I didn't really want to do what they were asking me to do, but the relationship with the people involved was really important to me. And so I said, that's fine. I'm just going to do it. Not a big deal. Where's my... One thing that's really important, whether you are a compromising style or you are negotiating with someone who is a compromiser, is they're looking for fair standards. When they want to set up this agreement, they're going to talk about what are the standards we're going to hold each other to. Just like with the collaboration, what are the milestones we're going to achieve? What's the behaviors we expect from each other, et cetera, et cetera. Compromisers are going to be looking for fair standards. So if you're across the table from someone who appears to be a compromising style, you're going to want to speak to them in the language of what are the standards we're all going to follow as we go forward with this agreement. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
What's the four-way stop?
Four-way stop. Oh, like four-way stop, right? Okay. So, yeah. So how's a four-way stop supposed to work? Who knows how a four-way stop is supposed to work? If you don't, that's okay, because I drive around all the time. It doesn't seem like anybody knows. How is a four-way stop supposed to work? Right. How does a four-way stop usually work? Right. It's chaos, right? You pull up to the four-way stop. Someone was there before you. For whatever reason, they don't go. Right. And so then you decide to go a little, and they decide to go a little, and you decide to go a little, and finally go, either you just stop in the middle of the intersection and let them go and compromise, or you just charge through and hope they don't charge through at the same time, right? That's what it means in the four-way stop example, right? We all know how we're supposed to do a four-way stop, but the actual practice of a four-way stop is usually a bunch of people compromising to let someone go through, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Did that make sense? I heard it from him. I wanted to make sure I heard it from you. We're going the other way. Avoiding style. This is actually one of my favorites. It's, again, another one that sounds terrible. This is someone who just doesn't want to negotiate. Who's ever been in this situation where they're dealing with someone and they're trying to get an agreement for someone or work on a project with them, and they just don't want to deal with it? It wasn't me, was it, Elias?
No, but I feel like I've used this one myself.
Yes, this is actually a great one to use.
Do you mean that in an acquiescing kind of style or in an overwhelming kind of a way? Like, I don't want to negotiate with you because I don't give a damn about what you think or feel. I don't care if you do. Or am I avoiding am I avoiding negotiating with you because I don't care what happens to you or what you think? I'll even do bad faith to get what I want. Or are we talking about avoiding style and that I'm willing to acquiesce to whatever you want? I just want to get out of that room.
So the second one you talked about is more of the compromising style.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you whatever you want so I can get out of this room. This is not doing bad things to get to somebody, but this is very much the I'm just not even going to engage kind of thing, right? Who has ever Who's ever avoided something? Give me an example of something you've avoided. Go ahead. Did you say taxes? Just remember you're on a live stream.
I guess like life insurance, like I mean like I have life insurance, but like them recruiting me to sell life insurance.
Oh yeah. Okay, talk about that more. How do they approach you about recruiting life insurance?
Well, it was what you mentioned, the what I need because of my fears and fear. Need and fear. I went on to a Mexico trip, so they got me there. Because what if something happened to me? So that was my fear, leaving my family, with nothing.
And so,
and it was a need.
They tried to get you to buy life insurance.
I bought it.
And you bought it.
I
so
bought
you
it.
didn't avoid it.
No.
So you compromised.
Yes.
Okay.
But now I learned my lesson.
Now you learned your
I'm
lesson.
gonna avoid
So
it.
how will you approach that in the future?
Just ignore them.
Just ignore them, right? The story I always use about the avoiding style and why I think it's great. So I've had a business for about actually 10 years now. Every week, I get an email from a cleaning service that wants to send me an estimate for cleaning my commercial building. I don't own a commercial building. I mainly work from home. I mean, I have a membership at a co-working space for mail and business license and that kind of stuff, but I really don't go down there that much. And I don't make the decisions about who cleans that place. So that email comes in every week and I just delete it. Because I could call them up, I could email them back, and I could say, please take me off of your mailing list. But that's more effort for me than just deleting the email every week. And now it goes into my junk mail folder. So now I just delete it with the other 40 emails that day that come into the junk mail folder. So when you want to avoid a confrontation, when discussion isn't important to you, when it's not necessary to get something you want, when it's really just extraneous to your life, avoiding can be really great. Does that make sense? Just because someone, did you say no? Okay. Do you have a follow-up question?
I mean, you're negotiating, right? I mean, is that really negotiating if you're just avoid?
Go ahead, Elias.
I have an example, a recent example. I've been working on my book, which many of you guys probably have heard about or know about. It's the pro-immigration book. And somebody recently emailed me a whole litany of debating me on this topic. And my response was to unsubscribe them from my email. And the reasoning is they haven't read my book. So I'm not going to engage in that debate until they read the book. But that was an example of me applying the avoiding style to not lose energy in a debate that wasn't going to be fruitful in any way. It was not a negotiation worth having at all.
Yeah. Also, pre-order Elias's book on Amazon.
Robert did order one.
No, what we're going to get into a little later is the negotiation starts long before you sit down at the table to negotiate with them. And this is one of those things, right? This is I'm not even going to come and sit at the table with you, or you might do this at key points in a negotiation, right? We talked about how leverage can change. But sometimes the situation needs to change before you go back to that negotiating table so you can go in and go, you guys see the cover of the RJ this morning? I think we have some things to talk about, right? So for about 24 hours, you might avoid coming back, right? Because you know the situation is going to change and your leverage is going to be different tomorrow. So you can do this, but this is great before you get into the negotiation, but it can also be really great if you know that your situation is going to change and internal or external circumstance is going to change to the negotiation that can improve your leverage. Yep. Okay, cool. I don't think anyone's ever asked that question before when I've done this. How are we doing on time? Oh, we got to get through this. All right. Avoiders want to put discussion off. Right? Now, if someone's avoiding you and you're in the middle of a negotiation, start doing some intelligence work and seeing what might be changing in the leverage, right? And then there's accommodating. This is very similar to compromisers, but this is kind of whatever you want. Again, this is a situation, this is a style you can adopt when the relationship is important to you and the stakes or the outcome are not. You need to be really careful if you're adopting an accommodating style and you're up across the table from a competitor. Competitors can take advantage of accommodators really easily. But this is really great when building the team is important. Who's ever Who's ever been part of a team that's just forming and just kind of giving stuff up because it's important to get the team formed, and then we'll straighten out some of this stuff later, right? Accommodators want to solve others' problems, which is really noble, but not always the best thing we want to do in negotiations. So how do we find out someone's bargaining styles? Well, we may have a prior relationship with them. They may have a reputation, right? We're all around the business community in Las Vegas. We all know people here. Go ahead, Sammy.
Is it possible for someone to have more than one bargaining style? Like, I feel like I could tap into a different one if I needed to.
Yes, absolutely. So when you do the assessment, you will find that you will gravitate towards one in particular, and then you will have a secondary one. Those might be very close. Because there are 5, you'll take the quiz, it'll put you into buckets. It actually has a cool little graph you can draw if you want to do it. But yes, the important thing to take away from these is 1, recognizing other people's styles as you get to know them and negotiate with them. But 2, recognizing that all the things we just talked about here are techniques and tactics we can adopt, right? The avoiding one is something, even if you're not a natural avoider, right? I'm a natural collaborator. I want to get to win-wins. I don't see the glasses half empty or half full. I see, let's get all these glasses filled up for everybody, right? But there are times when I go, I'm just going to avoid this. This is not worth my time. I don't care about the stakes of this. I don't care about the relationship with the other person. I don't care about your cleaning company, right? So that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make me a bad person. We just don't have mutual interest. So that's the idea, is when you see that a different style from the one you gravitate to will be more effective, and we have a whole chart of these that we go into in the longer version of the course. When you see it's more effective, or you think it'll be more effective, go ahead and jump into that avoiding style. Go ahead and jump into that competitive style, right? If you're finding out that nobody in the negotiation is interested in a win-win, you may switch to that competing style just to make sure you get the minimum of what you need. And we'll talk about that minimum in a bit. Cool? Did that answer your question? Yes, don't just use one style.
I have a question, and non-business, but it is. They don't see eye to eye. I'm looking for something from either one of them that suggests to me if I go there, I can get that one to get there. So that's why this is very important for me. I love it because of that, because I've dealt with a lot of times, especially avoiding. I've been in places where I'm going to get up and get out of the room, right? In my mind, say, no, listen to them. Because eventually they're going to say something. They're married. So eventually they're going to say something I can grab onto and get them to agree to. I like this.
Okay, good. I'm glad this is helpful. Yeah. So yes, if you are doing any kind of couples counseling, there are probably a couple of these styles you do not want to choose to adopt, right? I mean, I'm not in a long-term relationship right now, but even I know the avoiding and the competing are probably not where we want to go with these, right? I think we want to look at collaborating, compromising, and maybe accommodating a little bit, right? So, but at the end of the day, let's like recage ourselves when we talk about at the top. In business, we're trying to create win-win situations. Who's heard the term make the pie bigger? Couple people? Okay. So when you go to business school, they teach you, so there's zero-sum game of looking at business. There's only so much money in the world. Our shareholders want us to make as much money as possible. We have to get as much money as possible because there's only so much money in the world. Except if you know a little bit about economics and business, you can create opportunities. Right? That's what Dave is out here talking about with his networking stuff. You're creating opportunities for you, opportunities for your friends, opportunities for your colleagues, opportunities for the people around you. And that in turn creates greater opportunities for revenue, greater opportunities for profit. You can make the pie bigger by creating opportunities. That's the idea, right? Go ahead.
I don't know if you're going to get to this or not, but I had a quick question on, is there a tool or a way to assess your relative position with respect to leverage? Like if the person you're negotiating with has way more leverage over you, or if you have more leverage. What I'm thinking of is like a labor management relationship, particularly like in the public sector, to where the labor union leader not only has the leadership, the leverage of the members, but also the mayor and the council, owe their seats to, you know, the endorsement of the labor union versus the city manager who may have considerably less political leverage in negotiations. Is there a tool or a way to assess just how strong or weak your leverage position is? And if so, are you going to speak to that?
I don't think there's not an app to download.
Right. I don't know if there's a rubric or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But like deeper into this book, they get more into the things, and deeper into the course I do. They get more into the things you would want to look at. But this is a good start, right?
Right.
How do I determine somebody's bargaining style? It's the same things. Like, what's the relationship I have with them? What's their reputation? What are the things going around, right? We know that leverage doesn't always come from you and me and our relationship sitting across the table. We know external factors like you talked about, right? How much influence does the mayor have on this versus the city manager? In some cities, the mayor might have a lot of influence, where in other cities, or even in the same city in a different administration, the mayor may not have as much leverage as the city manager does. The unions, certainly, especially in this town, have a lot of influence.
Right.
And that, I wouldn't say they have leverage, but they have influence, and that impacts your leverage, right?
Well, if you only won your council seat by 3%, then that's not influence, that's leverage. If that endorsement got you 5%.
Right. So no, there's no one tool, but you're talking about all the right things, understanding all the players involved. And we are going to talk about third parties when we get down further into this. And when you're around the table, what's your verbal interaction with them? What are the phrases they use? The older version of these slides used to have a bunch of sayings that the different accommodating styles had, and the slide got really busy, so I took them off. But there are statements that people will make that lead you to understand what their negotiation style is and how they're approaching the negotiation, and their nonverbal cues as well. What's their body language like? Are they nervous? Are they twitching? Are they shaking their leg? Are they nervously looking around the room? Are they not making eye contact? Or are they making really good eye contact? Do they have a firm handshake when they come in? These are all things that you can do to understand somebody's bargaining style, as well as things you can understand to try to determine what the leverage is in the situation. Cool? Go ahead.
Yes. Is there any key words they would use depending on?
Let me go back up. Accommodators are very much, how can I help you? Avoiders say a lot of, see how I'm saying nothing? Because I'm avoiding it? I didn't know if my joke landed. Compromisers, whatever it takes, whatever you need to get this done. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Collaborators, how can we make the pie bigger? Stuff like that. How can we make this great for both of us? Competitors, I've got a bottom line and I'm going to get it, or I'm going to crush you, right? And that may not be the exact words they use, but there are variations on that you can pick up on. Come on.
So in a sense, you might feel it as much as you hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would mostly, if I know I'm going into negotiation with someone, whatever the situation is, I'd be asking around. I'd be doing a little intelligence and detective work to find out what I could prior, because sometimes the face people put on across the negotiating table is not the face they're really wearing. So I would ask around. Okay, so we're through bargaining styles. I'm going to try to go quicker on this, right? I'm going to try to go quicker on this. You guys had great questions, so okay. What persuades people? A bunch of these are going to get knocked off by this next section. So, what persuades people? Needs and fears are part of it. What else? Money? What? Yep. Their network can persuade them. Emotional hooks, absolutely, right? No. Right. People actually mostly make decisions emotionally, then rationalize it later, right? We've all heard that. Okay. When it comes to negotiation, for the most part, There are some folks out there this doesn't apply to, sociopaths and psychopaths. We're going to assume you are not negotiating against one of those. Human beings have a psychological drive to appear to maintain an appearance. This is a terrible slide I made. To maintain an appearance of consistency and fairness. Who is the kind of person who would like to be thought of as someone who is fair and consistent in their dealings with people? Okay, I didn't see all the hands go up, but I saw some nods. I'm going to assume that's everybody. We all want other people to think we're good people. So that means we either do things to show that we're good people or pretend to be good people. Either way in negotiation, this is what we want to remember, is that people are hoping that we are fair and consistent, and we are hoping and counting on other people to be fair and consistent. And because we're counting on other people to be fair and consistent, we want to use this drive when we persuade our counterpart. Does that make sense? What does that mean to you?
Win-win.
Win-win is part of it. What else?
Your strategy
Say,
align with that.
say more about that. Keep going.
So
Use this in the strategy based on how you're positioning the different things that you want to get, with that in mind of they want to be perceived as fair. So you need to model that, and essentially your energy needs to be expectant of that, and how you communicate what you're desiring is all part of that nuance.
Right. If we want to be persuasive to people, it's not enough to convince them what we think is fair. We want to speak to them in the language that they think is fair. Does that make sense? We may not agree with it, but if we're trying to get to a win-win situation in negotiation, we need to understand what our counterpart believes is fair and speak to them in that kind of language. Because if we speak to them in that kind of language and they agree that what we're talking about is fair, it's really hard for them to say, but I can't agree to that, right? This is what comes down to norms and standards, right? We talked about that a little earlier. It was a real brief note on the slide. What are the norms, intellectual, cultural, societal, relationship norms that your counterpart believes in? If this is someone you know and have a prior relationship with, you probably have a pretty good idea of this. You may need to do some asking around when you find out you're going to be negotiating with someone or starting to do a deal or a project with someone to figure out what they think is fair. Now, the great thing is once you do get down to the negotiating table, they often will start talking about what they think is fair, right? Or what they think is unfair about what you're saying.
Yes.
You guys find that to be true?
Yes.
That's good information. Prepare your arguments for what you are trying to get, right? We make assertions and we support them with evidence, right? We want to make those assertions and support with evidence that aligns with their norms of fairness and consistency, right? Make sense? And of course, anticipate the arguments they will make, not based on what you think is fair, based on what they think is fair. Relationships. Okay. You obviously have a relationship with the other party, the person you're negotiating with, even if it has just started as part of this negotiation. Who else do you have relationships with?
Yourself.
Yourself? Your team? Who else?
Stakeholders.
Coworkers, stakeholders, yes. Right? And important stakeholders are decision makers. One thing to remember about when you're negotiating, the person you're negotiating with may not be the person who's making the decision. Who's a veteran? Raise your hands, veterans. How many times have you been talking to someone from another squadron or unit and you come to what you think is an agreement on something and they go, okay, I got to go back and ask my colonel. I got to go back and ask my captain, right?
All the time.
All the time. I imagine it's the same in the corporate world too, right? Understand who the decision maker is. If it's not the third party, or I'm sorry, if it's not the person you're across the table from with and it's a third party or someone up in their chain of command, what do you think you have to know that we just talked about if the person across the table from you is not the decision maker?
Who is the decision maker?
Absolutely. What else do you need to know about them? Yep. History on them. Specifically what? What? Their norms and standards, right? What are the standards of fairness, the norms of consistency that the decision maker believes? You may be on the same page with the person across the table from you. If they're not the decision maker, you need to set them up for success when they go to the decision maker so that they can convince the decision maker, I made you a good deal, boss. Now they need to be your partner in that, right? They may tell you, I can't pitch this to my boss this way. Okay, how can we pitch it to your boss? What does your boss believe in? What are your boss's interests here? What is your boss's position? We'll get to interests and positions in a minute too. Go ahead.
The representatives are the ones telling the senators what the third party talked about. So then it's the same way you just mentioned. That's how it is in politics.
Yeah,
In
that's how it is in
Washington,
politics.
D.C.
It's how it is in everything. There are people who are out on the front lines doing stuff, and there are decision makers, and sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they're not. And we always have to remember that there is a decision maker, and if that's not the person sitting across the table from you, you need to speak through them to the decision maker. Cool? Go ahead.
If you know they're not the decision maker, do you like remain more firm in your position?
It depends on what we're trying to accomplish. It depends. We're going to talk about interests and positions in a minute, and that'll clear that up a little bit. When I'm negotiating with someone, when I'm trying to work a deal with someone, and I know whether I was in the Air Force or since I've gotten out, and I know they're not the decision maker, I really try to set myself up as a partner to the person across the table. How do we sell this to your boss? How do we walk into that room and show that we have represented your boss's best interests, which is different from positions, and we'll talk about how. How do we go represent your boss? What kind of language do we need to use? What's the right forum to do this? Do we walk in together and do it? Do we get you prepared really well to go in and do it? Do I make sure my boss, who might be the decision maker on my end, do we set them up to talk to each other? Which, again, if you've been a veteran, you understand that's how, the folks in the front lines work stuff out, and then the two bosses talk to each other, and it comes back completely different, right? So, hopefully not. But so that's how I do it. I try to set myself up to be a partner. Now, if the negotiations haven't gone well, where I can set myself up to be a partner, it might be very much, look, I presented an option that I think is fair. I presented some concessions that we're willing to give up on this. It might be a little more nuts and bolts, right? But I'm still, in my mind, I'm still trying to set them up for success. So when they go into that decision maker, the decision maker says, okay, I have a couple questions, but I'm kind of on board with this. Make sense? Okay. Third parties. This is one of my favorites. What did we learn about leverage today?
It's necessary.
Yeah, it's necessary. It's a thing. You can't avoid it, right? What else? Okay, it's dynamic. It's always changing. What else? Needs and fears. Agreement on whose terms?
Your turn.
Our terms, right? Agreement on our terms, right? If you want to change the leverage of your situation, how can you use third parties to do that?
By referencing a third party as an endorsement, or speaking to like what a third party says is the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like not my standard, but it's this respected third party standard.
Yeah, I mean, this was, again, for our veterans in the room, and I'm sure for folks who've worked for big corporate stuff, right? There are people who are not in the room or are not directly part of this that are stakeholders. Are you raising your hand or are you stretching? Oh, okay. He's trying to get me to stop in 5 minutes for you. Short version. There are third parties out there you can enlist. As it says in the slide, you can build some allies, right? If it's important to a third party that you get what you need to get out of this agreement, that can be leverage you can place on your counterpart, right? Whether that is saying to them, Well, I talked to the other squadron commanders and they agree with me. Or my favorite is when you take a break, hey, would you give this guy a call and tell him how important this is to you? Which can change your leverage, right? Dynamic leverage. That changes the picture for your counterpart if you can get a third party to intervene on your behalf and say, hey, this would really help us out if you do it this way. Okay. One of the things that's really important is who can influence the third party. If it's not you, what's another third party you need to bring in? A fourth party to influence the third party, right? Make sense? I know this is a lot of stuff. Building relationships starts long before negotiation. One of the things I learned when I was in the Air Force, when I was a young captain and a new major shortly after that, is I had to get to know all of my counterparts all around the base. Not because I needed something from them today, because I might be working with them on a project in the future and we wanted to have a good relationship, or I might need to rely on them to be a third party to back me up on what I was trying to do. Not because I'm trying to take away from anything anyone else is trying to do, but because we're trying to show, look, we're all on the same team. We're all looking out for what's good long before you ever have to sit. Dave talked about networking. This is where negotiation starts. You're building your network. You're building your relationships before you get to the negotiating table. All right. Dave wants me to wrap it up. Okay. When to walk away from a negotiation. Okay. Okay. Quick thing on goals and expectations. Remember how we talked about using brain, understanding how our brains work to help us out in negotiations? Some of that was understanding the leverage. Some of that was understanding needs and fears. Your brain has this really cool thing, or annoying, depending on your perspective about it, is the human brain feels a loss more significantly than it feels a gain. True. Right? True. The human brain feels a loss more significantly than it feels a gain. If you lose something, you're madder about it than you would be if you started at zero and gained something. None of us like it. That's how our brains work. So when you go into negotiations, when you're doing your preparation for negotiations, you are not going to go in and go, let me just see what I can get. I'm going to start at zero and build up. You are going to start out at the very top of what you want to get, your Cadillac solution, everything I want to get, and I'm going to let them talk me down away from that. And the reason we want to do that is because if we get talked down from something, we're going to be feeling that loss more intensely than we would feel as if we built up from nothing to get that thing. Does that make sense? Yes. This is why you want to build a plan before you go into a negotiation, and you want to plan for what's the most I want to get in my Cadillac solution, and then what are the things I'm willing to give up as I go along the way, right? Because then you don't feel that loss as intensely either. You won't let your ego get in the way. You won't let your emotions get in the way because you've already thought about what you're going to give up in order to get to a deal. Make sense? Yes. Does everybody believe me on that? Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, everybody believes me. Good. Not everybody does all the time. When we set our expectations high, it gives weight and conviction to our statements when we go into that negotiation. Real weird quirk of the human brain. I've tried it both ways. I definitely get more out of it when I start at the top and work down. Okay. Interests versus positions. This is really important. We've already hit on this a little bit. What are interests and what are positions? What are interests? Yep. So your desires, your wants, your interests or your counterpart's interests are what do they need to get out of the negotiation? How is that different from positions?
What they have to offer, or
yep, resources, what you have, how you propose to get there, right? That's really what it is. Who's ever been in a situation where you go in and you're talking to someone like, I need this, and 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 you listen to all these things and you go, No, what you need is this. Who's ever been in that situation, right? Yeah, we've all been there, right? So old school negotiation, that transactional competitive negotiation was always we're going to go with our positions, and we're going to only move off our positions when we're forced to, when the leverage is so bad, right? When we understand somebody's interests and what they really need to get out of the situation, now we can speak to them in their language. We start to speak to them in terms of those norms and standards of what's fair, and work with them in a win-win situation to get them their interests and our interests, instead of falling back on our positions and sticking to our positions that aren't going to get us anywhere. Who's ever had a boss tell them to go in and say, go in and get this and don't come out with any less than this? Is that a position or an interest? It's a position, right? Now, if you go and you ask your boss, say, hey, what's our real interest in this? Now you can go in and say, okay, well, what if I gave that up? What if I gave that up? Because we're still meeting our interest, right? Really important. Understand interests versus positions. Also understand how might it help you in the long run to make sure they meet their interests in a negotiation. All right, what else do we got here? Okay, quick exercise. We're to this point. All right, if you would, everyone please stand up, find a partner, join me in the hallway.
drop it now if you want.
All right. What did you guys learn about positions and interests from that exercise?
Absolutely nothing.
What was the interest of the folks on my right?
Get everyone to the back of the wall.
Right. And that was the interest in both scenarios, right?
Yeah.
What did I do to you in the first scenario? Right. I forced you to take a position, right? That was not clear of what your interest is. Right? What were my instructions to you guys on the right for that first exercise? All you could do is push with your hands, right? For my folks on the left who are getting pushed, what was going through your minds when that went on?
What do I got to do to take this guy out?
Right. You had no idea what was going on, right? How did your bodies react when they started pushing on your hands and you had no idea what was going on?
What do I got to do to take control of this situation?
Right. Who felt like when those hands started getting pushed, whose instinct was to resist? Everybody's. Okay. Another quirk of the human brain. When you start pushing on someone without telling them what your interest is and why you're doing it, they start pushing back. Sometimes mentally, sometimes emotionally, sometimes physically. I should probably be speaking into this microphone for our streaming audience, but they're getting a really good show with my hands. Okay. Remember this when you go into negotiation. It is very tempting to only focus on your positions. If you're trying to get to that win-win situation, especially when the stakes are high, think about sharing what your interests are. We just had a really strong illustration of what happens when you don't share your interests with the person you're negotiating with. Questions? Other takeaways on the exercise? Okay.
At the beginning, we talked about the word negotiation. And I'm not sure if it was just me or if it was explicitly stated, but it's an uncomfortable word. And I think my question is, as we take this away to our ongoing lives, if we think of negotiation as just like a singular moment, like negotiating your salary, then a lot of us will feel like we never negotiate. If you think about negotiating as like every time you talk to your spouse or every time you make a sale in your business, like all of those things will feel like you're constantly negotiating, but it's not a comfortable feeling. Like every time you talk to your coworkers, it's negotiating doesn't feel comfortable. So I would love to hear your take on this as someone who seems very comfortable with this topic.
My take on this as someone who is very comfortable with this topic and was not very comfortable with this topic is you have taken away exactly what I want you to take away today, is that a lot of us think of negotiation as something we do in life very rarely, and we are uncomfortable with it. When we look back at our lives, we negotiate things every day. What's fascinating to me about what we talked about here today is not all, but some of these things were things that I kind of figured out on my own in the Air Force. The getting to know all the other captains and majors around the base was something that seemed like a good idea, but I would never have put it in this context of leverage and relationships and preparing yourself for negotiations and needing and having these relationships in place to leverage and work, collaborate and create win-win situations with later on. Right? Dave's whole presentation this morning was about how do you start building these relationships. We negotiate things every day. What are some of the small things you negotiate in life every day? Yeah, with yourself going to the gym, right?
Gym, yes.
We negotiate with ourselves too, but if you've got a spouse, you negotiate who's going to watch the kids or where are we going to dinner tonight or a significant other. What are we going to do on Friday night? We negotiate these things all the time. And that's really one of the things I want you guys to take away. A big thing is this is not something we do rarely. This is something we do all the time. And when we look back on it, we probably understand a lot of these principles intuitively. And it's just a matter of raising it to our level of conscious thought when the stakes are higher, that this is something we know how to do. Can I get the next slide? I'm trying to see where we are. I think we're at the end. Oh, let me do this real quick. We talked about those transactional kind of negotiations. There's a concept called positive bargaining zone and negative bargaining zone. I'm going to put this in the context of a used car for you. The seller wants to get a minimum price. The seller wants to get the highest prices possible for the used car. The buyer wants to get it for the lowest price possible, right? If those overlap, you've got a positive bargaining zone. Next slide, please. If those don't overlap, you have a negative bargaining zone. That is probably a time to walk away. Don't be afraid to walk away from a negotiation. Too many people get past their bottom line. And, you know, there may be relationship reasons to do that, but if you've prepared yourself for a negotiation, you've decided what your bottom line is, don't go past it. I know that's hard to do. Next slide, please. That's why you want to know what your BATNA is before you go into any negotiation. Who's familiar with that term? A couple people, right? Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What's going to happen in your life if you don't get an agreement? Outside of the negotiation, you want to try to make that as good as possible for you. If you have a really good alternative, if you don't get an agreement, great. Don't get an agreement, right? Know it before you start. Next slide, please. We're going to go back to leverage. The better your alternative, the better your BATNA, the greater your power, the greater your leverage, right? If your needs are low, if your fears are low, you have better leverage than your counterpart. Next slide, please. I know I'm way over time. Whoever has the most to lose has the least leverage. Next slide. If your counterpart thinks you are in a strong position for whatever reason they think that, you are for now. Why? Why for now? Yep. Leverage is dynamic. Never forget that. We touched on all the foundations. Next. I'm way over time, but maybe Dave will let us have a few questions if there are any more questions.
Thank you, Jason.
All right.
Dave, can you come up through intros? What's that? Can you do the next intro, please? Yep. Oh, that was great.
All right, one more big round of applause for another incredible veteran entrepreneur presenter. Thank you guys so much. And for anybody who's watching live, we've got another great presentation coming up. Then we have lunch. Lunch is coming up by Annie's Kitchen, some incredible barbecue. So you're probably already doing a barbecue today, but if you are, it doesn't matter. That's probably later. Come on down to Nevada Partners. We've got a few more great presentations, lunch, and then we'll close it out with a cool panel discussion and just a lot of like workshop stuff that we can apply some of the things that we've learned today. So thanks, buddy. So for everything that you guys just learned, I want to add something. I did not add this to my presentation, but I want you to think about that as we go into the next presentation. And also I want you to think about that with what you just learned with Jason. Every time you go to one of these big events, a conference or something like that, there's a lot of stuff that you can start to, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. And then sometimes you'll like make a note of it. And even then you'll go back a week later and look at the notes and like, I have no idea what this means. Right. So I want you to think real easy takeaway, two things. What is one thing that you can start doing and one thing that you can stop doing based on the presentation that you just saw with Jason sharing that right there? What's one thing that you can start doing when it comes to negotiation? What's one thing that you can stop doing? So those are a few takeaways. I want you to also think about that as we go into the next presentation. And I'm really excited. Mike Fox is actually one. I'm trying to think when I actually met him or how we connected. It's been a couple years ago. But I remember back when I was doing the Pursue Vegas project, I reached out to Mike Fox and I was like, hey man, I'm trying to bring a bunch of the collaborators together. And he showed up, right? Rule number one, show up. And we got together and we talked about a lot of the stuff going on. When I learned he was a veteran and the stuff that he's doing with his content creation, media and marketing and all that stuff, I was really excited to invite him to today. And he said, yes. So up next, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Mr. Mike Fox, and he's going to drop some truth in the world of media.
Thank you, sir. Dave is awesome. He's always the one that I go to for connections when it comes to anything going on in Vegas. So if he invites me to something, I always want to at least look at it and see what it's about. So I remember also meeting Elias here. at the same time, like during COVID some time ago. And it was very interesting, like just kind of the collaborative ideas that we had at the time that really sparked a whole different trajectory for me. So I'm here to talk to you guys about social media content. That might be intimidating to some of you. That might be fun for some of you. Some of you are just confused. I don't know what this stuff is. My grandkids do it. My children do it. They're dancing and acting weird and doing crazy things and saying things I don't understand. Well, let's look at the aspect of why. Like, why is social media becoming a thing today? And like, why is that such a huge benefit for your business if you leverage it properly? So before we dive in, let me give you a little bit of history on who I am, my little bit of experience and whatnot. So is there a clicker or anything that I need to click on? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Oh, I see that I'm on camera somewhere, so I need to figure out how to position myself properly. Right here in the middle? Okay, gotcha. All right, perfect. I like to move around, so this is going to be a little difficult for me. So I got into doing video content when I was in high school. I was that loner kid who walked around with the camera. I love to express my creativity. It was a way for me to connect with people around me, to express my message, to share stories, to just pretty much bring people together who didn't have the same perspective as each other. And I loved being able to hear someone's story and be able to share that story with someone else. And then those two people have a new connection, right? That's how videography kind of started for me. Social media wasn't even around then. YouTube just came out. Mark Zuckerberg was working on Facebook. And the next thing you know, those two things kind of connected, right? So YouTube came out, people were vlogging, walking around with a giant camera. You might see like some people walking around like just talking to themselves. They must be crazy, all this kind of stuff. What's like the word influencer wasn't really around. It was YouTuber or vlogger or blogger, those kind of things. And when Facebook came out, people were able to share their ideas through video and share images and share other people's messages with their friends and family. So the idea of things going viral started popping off when you started seeing the same video over and over and over on your feed again. But the thing is, how did that become connected to business, or how did some people leverage that for their business? So we're going to cover some of that when it comes to how can you take social media, your phone, your camera, some words that you like to write, and share that with your audience so that they can make a decision to either connect with you or even to make a sale and purchase something from you. Okay, so I want to kind of gauge and see where everybody's at when it comes to social media content, because this can go two different ways. I can walk you through my slides and we can kind of go over those topics, or I can really help you guys individually with any personal questions that you guys have. And this can be more of like a takeaway applicable training for you. That way you guys can actually work on things instead of just like, oh, okay, now I have an understanding and I have to do all the research myself. Which one kind of sounds better? The first one where I just kind of go do an overview, or you guys want to do more hands-on where I go back and forth? Hands-on, back and forth? Okay. The second one?
Second.
First one?
Sounds like you guys need to negotiate.
Okay. All right. So we'll do a little bit. So some of you who has no idea about social media. You're not on social media really. You're not really using it for your business. So everyone else is using social media right now for your business. Okay. So if you are using it for your business, that means you are posting at least, I'm going to go real small here, at least twice a week for your business. Okay. Are those like videos or are those like photos? You can shout. Yeah. Videos. Both. And are you talking about your business, or are you just saying, this is me? Hello world. Are you talking about your business? Okay, cool. So you have an idea of at least how to post and use the platform. What's your question? Okay. So we can go over that too. So that's part of like strategy as well. So here, let's do this then. So we have content strategies and why content strategies actually matter when it comes to your business. Okay. So if you're going to use social media, you have to understand that it is a tool and not a distraction. And a lot of people want, like, they get on social media and they just start scrolling the death scroll, right? You go on social media with a purpose. No one goes on social media saying, oh, I'm going to educate myself today, and I'm just going to keep scrolling until I find things that teach me or stick out to me. You need to go on social media with the mindset of, what am I going to give to my audience? You know, what am I going to put out there so that they look at me as the authority, the person who knows what they're talking about. They have something of value to exchange for my time and my energy, right? So there's a lot of research involved in this. And I can't go into a lot of context of that right now, but we will go over some techniques that you can use to actually find people, asking yourself these right questions on how to find your target audience, whether you're selling a service, a product, or what have you. Okay. Actually, so I can have some clarification, what types of businesses do we have in here today? You can just shout them out. E-commerce, photography, coaching, juice bar, software. Okay. Okay. So there's a couple different things here when it comes to different types of content we can use. Some people, like the coaching, for instance, or maybe even juice bar, is going to be more face-to-face kind of interactions. Someone said software. Is there anything else that's just like, you know, you just have your nose down in a computer? E-commerce. So you don't really need to interact with people, right? So there's two different sides: the people who have to interact with people, and the side of people who don't really necessarily need to interact with people. Those are two different types of strategies of content. Okay, so if you're someone who interacts with people, you're going to want to show your face a lot more. Okay, you're going to want to possibly speak on camera if that's something that is hard for you or easy for you. That's great. If it's hard for you, there are some strategies. Is that difficult for anybody, speaking on camera? Is that something that you're looking into doing? Anyone? Okay, so nobody wants to speak on camera. Yes, you're interested in speaking on camera. You do some. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So if you have questions about like easier techniques and how to speak on camera, we'll get to that. So kind of put a tab on that. And if you're not looking into doing any speaking on camera, then being able to formulate your ideas and capture ideas in a structured way so that you guys can have a set routine of content that's ready to go, we'll go over that as well. Okay, so the next slide, what do we got? So we're going to create a content calendar. If you guys have a notebook or anything to kind of write down and kind of keep things organized for yourself, we're going to go through this. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have your topics, right? What are you going to be covering? These are called your content pillars. Okay. So with content pillars, I would recommend having about 3 to 4 main pillars that you cover. Now, this could be obviously your business, like what you do. This can be some like your messaging, like what do you believe, like the value of what it is that you create. This could also be some interest things kind of related to your business that you would find, like say if like you did clothes, like, okay, so what types of clothes, fashion trends, all these kind of things like that. E-commerce, what are some ways that people can actually utilize your product in what scenarios, you know? So you have your pillars there. And under your pillars, you're going to have some subtopics. These subtopics are usually things like mistakes or the do's and don'ts, okay, or things that kind of create controversy, or even things like things you didn't know, facts, right? These things kind of give a sense of value to people who are interested in these things. You'd be like, oh, okay, this is something I need to look at, right? So the reason why I'm kind of taking you through this process of planning before just what editing software or what ways do I need to shoot myself on the camera and stuff like that is you need to understand the whole reasoning to why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. Because once you understand the psychology behind why, the messaging, your audience is going to go through a path psychologically to do what it is that you'd like them to do, which is to sign up for your newsletter, to purchase something, all these kind of things. So you want to understand what your post is supposed to complete by going through this whole process. So after you kind of have those subtopics, we are going to kind of, you want to write down like your Monday through Sunday. Okay. And what you can do is you can take these topics and do one topic per day. And maybe you can even do one pillar per day. Like, so this day is going to be this pillar day. Okay. And you can break that up however you want. There's no real thing. But the thing is, you want to set up your own routine so it's easy for you to know what's coming next, what you should talk about next. And you want to have this kind of set for about 2 weeks to a month so that you can kind of see how are people responding to this type of content. If you stay consistent, people will be like, oh, I always get good moral messages from this person about how their products brighten their day, or they give me some type of value in the sense of they always give me encouragement because they're talking on camera, right? So you want to be able to use these things in a strategic way so that people are like, okay, I see this consistency of what they're bringing, and I can always expect them to do that. Do you have a question?
More like advice for my future folks. I would go to ChatGPT and just type in like whatever business you have, and for it to create like the calendar for you, because as an older adult with that doesn't have any idea with social media, they struggle with creating the content.
Yeah.
So for a younger quote unquote adult that has struggled in the same area, I think using ChatGPT for mostly everything that has to do with content programming, anyone can do it. So you don't need to have someone to run your social media, as long as like maybe just to get your numbers up, your followers. But I would recommend that for our older individuals to do that.
Yeah, so
plug it in.
she's talking about ChatGPT. Who hasn't heard of ChatGPT at this point? Okay, so who is struggling with using ChatGPT? You still don't understand exactly how to use it. Okay, so if you were going to use ChatGPT to come up with some content ideas, instead of just typing in, hey, give me some content ideas, this is what you can do. So if you get the app on your phone, there's actually a new feature now where you can talk directly to it like a person, which is kind of creepy. Okay. But it's really cool because what you can do is you can be, hey, ChatGPT, you are a interviewer. I would like you to ask me questions about my business, about my company, so that you understand everything about my business so that I can make content. Okay. So ChatGPT is going to come up with some questions to ask you. You go back and forth because it actually will stop talking when you're talking. And then it will take all of those answers that you give, all those questions that you give those questions, and it will have an idea of what you're talking about, your business, your goals, whatever you're trying to do. Okay. So now that it's in the database, what you can do is now you can ask it, hey, I'd like to post a video a day. I would like to post something like this. Can you give me some content ideas at that point? And then ChatGPT is going to give you specific, custom, unique ways for you to come up with ideas. So that's a great tip. What was your name? Tessie. Awesome. That was great. So that's like a more advanced skill that I like to teach a lot of my clients. What is our next slide? I'm trying to see what's next. Okay, so routines. So when it comes to creating your content, okay, you want to have some type of consistency. Now, for the people who aren't talking on camera, you want to be capturing footage on a consistent basis called B-roll. Anyone heard that term before? Okay, so B-roll is just footage that doesn't really have any purpose besides just showing what's going on in a sense, okay? So for instance, I'm gonna take some B-roll right now of me giving a presentation to you all from selfie mode. So this right here would be B-roll, right? I'm not really talking to the camera, but I'm showing what's going on in my life. This is something that I could post to my story, right? And I could add a little bit of text just to kind of get people engaged, because a lot of people, they're nosy. You're a person, you're nosy. Yeah, exactly. There's people that you don't even like and you still want to know what's going on in their life. You want to see if you're doing better than they are. So there's certain things that we like. It's as easy as it is to just do that. It's as easy as it is to not do that. Okay. You may not have a tripod like this. There are definitely really cheap little selfie sticks that have these little feet on the bottom that are like $10 that you can get. You know, you can order one on Amazon and it'll be there by the time you get home. So these little things, these little investments in your business are starting to become more needed, and you can't put it off anymore, because there's going to be some 16-year-old who's going to bypass you in their e-commerce store just because they decide to pick up their phone and just say something or show something. And if you're going to have a little bit of an ego and not do it, then you're not serious about your business. You know, especially the fact that you have a free opportunity. You know, you have your own camera crew in your phone. You have your own editing crew in your phone. You know, there's so many softwares and so many different apps that you can use today to just solve these problems. And there's so many people online who are willing to help you solve these problems for free, because they just post good stuff that teach you how to do these things. So if you are stuck, find someone who's in your industry on social media, follow them, and then just see what they're doing. They may be thousands upon followers ahead of you, so you don't need to do exactly what they're doing, but try to find what you can do on a smaller scale. You know, we're going to go into engagement in a second, of like how to actually reach out to a cold audience and actually kind of build that network. Say like you have a few followers, maybe you don't have any more than a couple hundred followers or 1,000 followers right now for your business. How do you actually get people to like interact with your page, to grow your views, to get more reach and expansion across social media, right? Because the way that the algorithm works is you need to get people to watch a certain percentage of your video right when you post it. If you post a reel, which is like the really long, the tall videos that you see when you're just swiping, not the YouTube videos, they're usually about a minute to, I think the max is a minute 30 right now. If you post one of these videos, the algorithm is going to show it to about 10 people, 10 of your most engaged people, people who usually either go to your page a lot or at least comment or like or interact with your posts on a regular basis. After it sends it to those 10 people, if they watch about 20% or more, then they'll send it to another window of people for about 100 people, okay? If the first 10 people don't interact with that very well, and then the next 100 people do the same exact low interaction, that's when your video is going to start to die, okay? And there's a couple ways that you can fix this. Your first 3 seconds of your video need to be very, very engaging. What do I mean by that? Your video needs to capture attention, meaning visually, or it needs to get someone thinking. So how do you do that? Well, think about yourself. What stops you from scrolling? You're going down on your phone and all of a sudden, whoa! What was that whoa? What made you go whoa? Was it the fact that, you know, you saw someone got hit by a car? Or was it the fact that the text said something that hit you emotionally? You know, you read something that about your marriage and why you're not being a good spouse. And you're like, okay, what does this person know? You know, you got to think about the psychology, not just the, I need someone to buy my product. Hey, I'm selling microphones. No, it's more about, hey, did you know that nobody's listening to you? Because you're not talking in the microphone. Think about that. At first, you're like, okay, why is nobody listening to me? That stops you. You have to hear what's next. You're not just going to be like, but it hits your ego, gets you a little bit. So you have to think about what's stopping people. Now, ChatGPT can help you do this. These are called hooks, okay? You probably heard the word hook before. A hook is either visual, audible. You can use multiple at the same time. I recommend keeping a record of what hooks you, keeping a record of what you see experts in your industry doing that hooks others. You can tell that by when you look at their videos, how many shares they're getting. The little arrow that you see pointing up, those are shares. If you see how many comments they're getting. Views are great, but it's really about shares and comments. If you see a lot of shares, that means people are obviously sharing it with others and they feel like they can share it on their stories and all of that. That brings obviously more views. Comments also make people stay to see what other people are talking about, which gives you more views. And a lot of people sleep on this, but captions, not captions just on the video, but writing a caption that's value impact, you know, not just nonsense, but stuff that people can take away and be like, oh, okay, so this is more information outside of just what I see in the video, right? You see those videos where people are like, here's 10 ways to stop this problem. And then it just says, read caption, right? And it's a really short video that's about 2 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds long or something like that to a trendy song. Now, the whole why does that video work is because they have a long caption that someone's taking 5 minutes to read. And in the background, that video is repeating over and over and over and over again. So the algorithm is like, wow, this person really loves this video. I'm going to share it to another 100 people, another 1,000 people. Okay. So I know this is like a fire hose of just information. I want to make sure that I'm tackling any specific questions that anybody has that they're kind of stuck with. Does anyone have problems when it comes to outside of just the structure of creating content? Maybe you're stuck with what to do in front of a camera. Maybe you have a problem with editing. Maybe you have a problem with something along those lines. Anyone have one question about what they're struggling with? What's up?
Sure. I think for me, it's more about like positioning on where to even start. Like there's like if there's so many things or angles I could talk about, what really is going to be impactful and you know worthwhile. I have a transformational process that it's like
you just have to do it versus like talk about it all the time. So
Right.
it's like one of those things. It's not just information. There is information, but after a while it just gets like, so what? Because it's the transformational process for people to engage in that makes a difference. So how do you do social media about it when they have to do the process to get the value? The information is not the value. The process is the value.
Okay. And what is it that you do?
I'm launching a tech company that I'm taking a process that I created to reprogram subconscious beliefs very quickly in the time it takes to listen to a song. I've perfected it to the point where it can be a self-guided software program for people to do it to help go into post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress. So it's reprogramming the mindset very quickly through music.
Okay. So they can
So
do
I have
this
the
on their own.
software,
They can do
I
this
have
on
the
their own, like through
songs,
their
and I have
phone
the
or
process. Yes.
through a PC or however you
Mhm.
have it. Okay.
Right.
So I would show the experience, right? So maybe you would film yourself going through like now there's a little acting involved, right? So maybe you would show yourself going through that like a thought process where obviously you
I
were
was thinking
distraught,
about
right?
like change a subconscious belief a day.
Yeah.
Like today we're going to do this one. I mean, I could like give it away and then people have to engage or something like that, or a belief a week. I don't know.
You could do like a belief a week and share like the fact that here's like a mindset shift for you, right? You can do something like that. This is mindset shift Sunday. Okay. That's a tongue twister. And you could do a live like a week and be like, hey, this week we're going to be talking about, you know, this type of thing, and then kind of get some interaction. But if you're trying to do like a reel or like a post where it's like an image, it's those are, I think it's really easy for you to take a B-roll shot of maybe just you thinking, working, or even in a stressful, you know, like you have some kind of, you're sitting down here. Let me just give you an example. Say you're sitting here and you just lost in thought. You've probably seen some of these videos, and then they just have the text of what they're going through. And then the caption kind of walks you through the process of what your software can do, right? Here's my solution of what you can do. DM me and I'll be more likely to help you walk through that process. This is something you can do on like, say, Instagram. Okay. Is this making any sense?
Meh.
A little bit. So what I'm saying is like, if you had your phone on this tripod right here, and you're recording yourself, just can get that clip. You take that clip, you go into Instagram, and you add text on saying, if you're having those days where you're feeling really low on yourself, here's something that you can do. And then read caption, right? So it's a simple idea. And you can really go with that and just change the background, change the scenario, and you can repeat that over and over again with different texts. And honestly, people, they will see a different visual and they'll read it again, they'll check it out again. And the thing is, even if you're posting about the same topic, it's going to be sent.
I could take different pain points that people struggle with
Right.
and use that as a talk about the pain point, and then ultimately this is a solution of how you can change it, but just talk about the pain point and why it's important to change it.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that.
Yep. And you can do that on a repeat.
Right. Okay, I
Yeah.
can see that.
Yep.
Hi. So my take on social media, or my understanding of it,
Yeah.
is you basically just try stuff until something works.
Yes.
And I, as someone who's terrible at social media, only know what works based off of what is being shown to me, which oftentimes has hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments,
Mhm.
and then my Asian parent inside me is telling me I'm a failure and I should stop doing social media.
Comparison.
So
Yeah.
how can someone who is starting out understand what's working, that something is working, and that they should keep doing something
Right.
if all we're doing is trying a bunch of stuff and maybe all of it's not working?
Well, the thing is, you want to try something for a period of time to kind of get some data. So regardless of what happens for that period of time, you're going to get feedback. It either really sucked, or there are some things that, changed between each piece of content that you did that could have had an impact on that. Like I said, for once, the first 3 seconds of a video really matters. So sometimes doing the same piece of content, exactly the same visuals, same everything, same music, all of it, but just changing the first 3 seconds might be the problem, So it's not really just like, oh, this didn't work for me as it worked for someone else. You really have to get down to nitty gritty of like, sometimes even like, is it frame by frame that use the right part of the song that triggers someone's memory? These little small things can sometimes be what sticks out and pops off for you. So when you do it for a sustained period of time, you'll be able to notice, because you might post at a different time of day. You might post something slightly off from the last time you post. And those little changes could be like, oh, because I did that one, like, boom, when I jumped out, that for some reason stuck, because people like my expression when I do that. It's my unique way. So if you're stuck with trying to figure out what you should do to start off with, right? So go to one of your niches, one of the top authorities in your niche. Look at what's popping off for them. Do what they do, but with your own unique spin to it. So obviously don't have to copy every single frame by frame, shot by shot, but take their idea and just make it yours. Like, what would you change about it, right? And when you kind of get into an idea of like, okay, this is what I like, hone that skill, make it better. What can you change next time? How can you make it better next time? It's always about 1%, 2% better. You don't need to like completely revamp every single thing. And that's why people say it's kind of like a numbers game, right? So you just need to keep doing it and staying on some type of routine that works for you. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a freebie. I have a little way of you guys being able to structure this for yourselves. All you have to do is just take a picture and it'll send it to you. And that way you guys can kind of go through that and really see what I mean by everything that I'm explaining right here. So I just want to give that to you guys as a gift. You had your hand up too. I wasn't sure, but I just want to make sure I just want to make sure I saw your hand. So
just really fast to add on one tip that I always tell my clients, because I do work, I manage their social media.
Yeah.
It's just post at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, because when people wake up, they're going to see what you're posting.
Mhm.
And he has gained a lot of followers, likes, and all that. But can you talk about, we already do the social media, we already do the content, we already show, promote our business, we network. What's another thing we could do, or a tip that you could tell me to get more clients.
Okay.
I do get clients already from what I'm doing, but I want more clients.
Okay. So are you getting clients through people messaging you directly, or are you having to go and message people to get them to have a conversation with you? They're finding you, or you have to go hunt for them? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about going for the hunt, going for people, because everything else is pretty much, if you stay consistent with everything that I said there, just over time, while doing the hunt, you'll start growing and people will start chasing you more and more. So this is the hard part, because you have to be consistent on yourself. The algorithm loves it when you're consistent. And that includes not just posting, but engaging with other people. So you have to take the responsibility to go out and engage in other people's posts. Okay. You want people to talk to you, you got to go talk to other people. Okay. That's the thing. The thing is, though, you don't want to talk to the right other people. You don't want to just go on some random, like, funny video and just be like, ah, ha, ha, that was great. Like, that's nothing. Okay. You want to find people who are in your niche, who are doing really well, and they are getting so many comments that they can't talk to everybody in their comments. Okay. So you're going to go in there and be like, oh, wow, fresh meat. Like, all these people here have a problem and they're not getting met. So you go in and you just give them value. Someone has a question like, oh, I'm confused about this, or I agree about this. You can go in there and just start a conversation. Just be natural. Now, the thing is, when you have maybe a back and forth, maybe go check out that person's story. Okay, go check out their story. And when you mention something on your story that relates to you, I always look for something that I like. So I like to work out. I like to do videos, all that kind of stuff. I love to play with dogs, stuff like that. And you see someone post about something that you relate to, comment on that story. That'll take you straight to their DM. Okay. And people are more likely to respond or look at a DM when you react to something that they posted, especially on their story. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, what did you say about me? Or what'd you send? What did you react about my story? Instead of just sending a message, hey, are you interested in my service? Which I'm sure everyone's sick of getting those type of messages. It's better to show that you're interested in them first. So when you go into that story and you say something that like, hey, wow, that's really great. I love how you cook that meal, because people like to show their food. And just be like, man, I wish I could cook like that or something like that. And just get the conversation going, So I understand.
It's a fate worse than death.
That's what I'm saying. You have to find things that interest you. You want to find things that interest you, because if you are doing small talk with someone and you're just like, oh, wow, they have a truck and I'm not into cars. And you're like, cool truck, dude. And then now they're like, yeah, I have lifted, I have all this stuff. And you're just like, I don't even want, like, don't do that to yourself. Okay. That's probably not your customer. You have to find some, because if you're going to try to build a relationship with them for business or an opportunity to sell them something, you want to have something where you have that emotional connection on something. So if you utilize the free source of social media that gives you their entire lives, and then you naturally just start a relationship with them, who are they going to think of when they have a problem in your area? The person who has a great product and lots of advertising, or the person they were connected to that actually knows who they are and has already a relationship with them. Especially if it's like they have a question, they're going to be like, hey, I saw this video. What do you do? I was just curious, like I see you do the same thing as what I've been getting this ad on, So then they're like, okay, I'm going to try and do something where you can help them out. You can take it to the next step at that point, whether it's a Zoom call or, hey, check out my service or product, link in the description. Any other questions? These are good questions.
Sorry, not a question, just another tip. But Sammy, I think you were mentioning about like, how do you know like the stats of like your posting and stuff like that. So you can go to settings and change it to like personal blogging, business blogging. So you get to choose what kind of blog you want for your business Instagram or personal Instagram. For example, mine is my personal blogging, but it tells me how many people are seeing my posts, how many people are reacting to it, how many people are sharing it, and that information that before as a regular Instagram I would never see that. So once I made my business Instagram, I'm seeing who's once I link my personal business, so my business into my personal Instagram, I know who like went and followed my actual business. So we just do that. That's another tip.
Cool. Awesome. So primarily what I do is I help a lot of my clients who are business owners. A lot of them are coaches, and they do a lot of talking on camera, and they need to come up with lots of content, like just a plethora of amount. So we do batching. We batch, which means doing multiple videos at one time, and just knocking things out. It's just having those topics. I will go back and forth, interview style, kind of like what we're doing right now with asking questions. And then they just give me their honest input. And then we send it to my agency, and they will just edit it and make it look beautiful. Now, if you don't have an agency or you don't have the ability to do something like that, being able to use like software like CapCut, software like even Canva, and then there's even the TikTok and Instagram have really good editing abilities in there too. You always want to do a couple different things. You want to have your solid hook and intro, and you want to have a solid hook and intro, and you also want to have I just lost my train of thought there. You want to have a solid hook is one big thing. And then you also want to make sure that, audio is good and captions. That's what it was. I don't know why I didn't think of captions. He sent me hand signals, and I was like, what? So captions. A lot of captions, the thing about captions is a lot of people want to put captions in weird places. Okay, you need to keep your captions where I call it the focal dot, which is right here under wherever your shirt touches your neck, under the chin. You don't want to cover your face. You don't want the text to be way down low, because it can get covered up by the description in videos. It can be cut off on the sides if it's too big. This looks unprofessional, and people swipe right away. These are small things you have to keep in mind. The next is a thumbnail. People don't really think about thumbnails as much, but thumbnail is the freeze frame, the picture on your feed or your profile that people see of what's on your, like what to click on. So it's either like you see a picture, a frozen picture. Sometimes people have like a text, and sometimes you see a photo that's not even related to the video, right? You can upload another picture as your thumbnail, but you don't have to do this. What you can do that's easier than this to save some time is when you're making your first 3 seconds of your video, and if you have a text of a title of like, hey, this is my hook title text, you can use that frame as your thumbnail by going into the advanced settings before you post, and you can actually scroll through and pick which part of the video you want to be your thumbnail. I highly recommend you plan that ahead of time when you're editing or when you're filming, so that you know exactly where you want like your frame to be, where you're like maybe looking good and not like weird. So if you have that, because you have to think about it, a lot of people just post it and they walk away, and they come back and be like, oh my gosh, this thumbnail of me like
I know.
halfway in motion coming into the camera or something. Cool. Real quick, do's and don'ts. Don't start your video by saying, hey guys, hey everyone, hey, how's it going? Start your video by going straight to the point. Straight to the point. What do I mean by that? Today we're talking about why you shouldn't talk on camera without a plan. Instead of, hey guys, my name is Mike, I'm a videographer, and I want to talk to you guys about, you already swiped away, right? You're like, why do I even want to talk? Like, it's just, that's so much unnecessary information. It's different when you talk on social media compared to when you talk in person. When you're in person, it's good for me to come up and be like, hey, my name's Mike. It's nice to meet you. How you doing, sir?
I'm fine.
Awesome. Awesome. Where are you from?
From Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just
Cool.
moved.
Perfect. Like, so like you don't want to do that on social media because you come up and you're like, hey, what's going on? Awesome. It's done.
That's true.
It's done. It's done. So there's a difference too between doing that on posts like reels, image posts, and all that kind of stuff, to doing that on your stories. If you record a video for your stories, you know, I want you to think about talking to one person. Instead of saying, hey guys, say, hey, I was just thinking about you the other day, and I want to share something that you might find very impactful for your life. That right there, you feel like, oh, I'm on a FaceTime call with my uncle or my aunt or my mom or, you know, someone close to me who's talking directly to me in stories. People who watch your stories are the real ones, to be honest. Because when you do stories, if you make it past the second story of someone, you're usually interested in what they have going on and what they're sharing. Or if you click on someone's stories, that's intentional, right? So anytime you see a high bump in your stories, that's really good to understand, because you can test a lot of things on your stories to see if you want to create content from what's been popping off on your stories. It's a great place to do a lot of tests and just do it and just forget about it. Asking people, doing polls, doing quizzes, and all of that.
Okay. Sorry. When you're doing posting, kind of, I'm thinking about a strategy that I can systemize it somehow. And so you talk about the intro hook. You know how like news anchors or whatever back in the day, or, you know, they would often start they'd have a shtick of how they always started something and how they always ended it. It was like the same line or phrase.
This is Mike Fox, and you're live with the story of the century. Something
you know,
like that,
or
right?
ending, you know, or that ending, you know, out like an intro and an outro, a canned intro and outro that's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Do you recommend anything like that people get to know you because of a particular hooky intro and outro, or?
So yes and no. So I would use a visual intro as a hook. A good example is, you may have seen people do this when they're in their bathroom. They just slide in just like that. That's something you could do as a visual hook over and over and over again. Now, if you say the same thing over and over again, if you're not doing entertainment, it's kind of hard because people don't know what the video is about until they keep watching. But if you're entertaining and you just have a catchphrase and you just do some silly thing that you're known for, you know, someone who just does this all the time, or someone who has a catchphrase that they just say whenever something random's about to happen, that can work for them. Now, if you're trying to like explain something like a message or something, I would start off with what the video is about and then maybe your catchphrase, or find a way to put in what the video is about in your catchphrase, you know, whether it's a way that you say it, you know, or you can tie it in with the visual hook that you're doing. So I wouldn't just say something the same every single time, because people will just be like, oh, same thing, I've already seen this.
As we start to close, I have really, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Okay.
Everybody comes from different industries and stuff like that, but there's a lot of good profiles out there. I'm just going to go with Instagram that are really incredible, that are kind of blowing up for different reasons. What are 2 or 3 accounts that you recommend anybody follow to kind of watch what other people are doing that maybe catch you? Yeah, aside from Mike Fox, which if you're not following Mike, please check out his stuff. It's really good.
If you could put up the first slide
Yeah.
for me, you guys can take your phones and just screenshot that.
Yep. And then, so what are 2 or 3 accounts that you recommend, or that maybe you follow that you get a lot of really cool ideas from?
There's a lot, but I would say, for encouragement's sake, I would follow Gary V. A lot of people have probably heard of Gary Vee. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, there's this guy named Devin Jaffo, spelled Devin. Last name is Jatho. Now he's a younger guy, very, very bold, but you can see the controversy with what works if you just watch a couple of his videos back to back. Now this is more for talking head videos. If you're sharing information, you don't need to go so complex with his style. Just listen to his script. Listen to the words he's saying. Listen to the first 3 seconds. Listen to his outro that he does all the time. If you really want to find someone that's really great, find someone in your own niche. Find someone in your own niche, because everyone's doing their own game. They're just playing their own game at the best of their ability. And that's exactly what you need to do for your own content and your own business.
Now, keeping to the theme of shop local, right? That's one of the principles that I dropped earlier. Who's one account for somebody that's a local content creator that you would recommend? I want everyone to think about this, because one local account of somebody that you should follow who's doing some great content.
We have a lot of big names here in Vegas.
It could be big name. It could be a local person too. Either or. It's again, I want to try
a lot
and keep
of big accounts. That's
okay.
me personally.
Cool.
I think the best advice I could give you guys is finding someone in your niche that's killing it.
Cool.
Because if I tell you someone else local, I mean, yeah, they're doing great, but that could kind of confuse you in what you need to be doing for your content, because everyone's really different, and there's really no right and wrong. It's what works for you.
Cool.
And also because their social media looks so good doesn't mean they're getting the sales they want. So let's not confuse. Because even if I have friends that have like a small follows, small engagement, they are getting business out of it. So
Absolutely. That's the engagement tactic for sure. Right here, this is where you can get that free, it's kind of like a workbook, a little small workbook. You can actually fill out the content calendar yourself. I'm also working on a few other freebies right now, but obviously I need your email to keep sending you free stuff. So that's what that is. What's up?
What's the best platform to use if you're just starting right now? I mean, Facebook and YouTube it's just like hard to get your foot in. And so what would be the best?
What platform are you on right now?
Well, personally, I have Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. For you, it would be those two platforms since you're already on them.
Okay. But if you want to start one for your business.
For your business?
Yeah.
What business do you have? Like
we have an e-commerce and we have a nonprofit.
E-commerce, I would say if you can start finding a strategy that works for you on TikTok, and TikTok has been giving you the ability to put a link and also the ability to start messaging. When you get to a certain point of followers, you can start doing a link, but you need to actually
be consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Last one.
Yeah, sure.
From a time budget, I've heard people who are really, doing social media strategies and YouTube and things like that. I've heard people say that they spend 20 to 30 hours a week on their social media. What do you think is a really good budget, of time to dedicate to, doing the consistency and the strategies and so forth to block out that time?
So if you grab this right here, that's going to help you up front with the majority of that time of creating the consistency, the routine. So when you create a system of like, I'm going to post this day, and these are my topics and all that kind of stuff, and then you batch everything once a week, you don't have to be doing this daily all the time, putting in 3 hours. You can literally set up a calendar and have it remind you of when to post that's what's already been created on one day a week that you've spent the time to do.
Right, but between the content creation and then the posting, is there an average that you find that if you're doing 4 hours a week of, putting effort toward creating content and posting it, or 8 hours a week or whatever, do you have a range that you have found is in the ballpark for someone who's starting out who's never done it? And if I have to create consistency, I have to block out time. And so
Well,
that's the biggest commodity that's scarce.
if you block out, hear about this, just to start out,
Yeah.
block out an hour a day, but then block out also 3 hours a week on one particular day to kind of gather all your ideas and thoughts and analyze things. Okay. You're going to get better over time. You're going to have a faster system. You're going to have a faster process. You're going to do things better. Okay. You have to understand it's just like picking up any hobby or any type of skill. It takes time for you to learn and to really figure out what works for you.
And I think that's the final follow-up to it is, having never really done it, never like done a post before, I'm going to suck so bad.
Yep.
And so it's like, how bad can that hurt you? Where, versus like just keep at it and hopefully you'll be forgiven and
enjoy the process. Yep.
Just enjoy the suck. Yeah, don't get caught up in that final thoughts.
Oh God.
All right, so I just want to say thank you. If you guys got any value, obviously I am offering exclusively to you guys. If you take advantage of sending me a message, I would love to help you in wherever level a process for about 20 minutes. I usually charge for that, and I'm not doing that, so please take advantage of it.
Thank you so much, my friend. All right. So remember, what are my 2 questions? What's one thing that you're going to start doing? One thing you're going to stop doing based on what you just heard. That's a really easy action item of where you can take off with that. High five to Mike. Thank you for coming out and doing this. Also, thank you for your service. The whole theme for today being part of Freedom Week is everybody's a veteran who's presenting today. So Mike was in the Air Force. So high five on that. And there was, yeah. So he got to carry that over into this life as well. All right. We're gonna switch it up just a little bit because we're getting ready for lunch. And then because we're starting to really take this room to the next level, we're not doing any food or any of that stuff in this room. So we are going to be moving. But before we move, we're going to make this a working lunch, a little bit of a project to talk about what we've already done so far. So if you're taking notes, please jot this down. I can repeat these once we get in there, but a little note card, just 3 things that I want everyone to think about as we go in. We're going to make this a little bit of fun. So this will be a little bit of a engagement as well. We're working out the logistics of the Veteran Entrepreneur Library. I'm really excited about this. This is going to become such a powerful anchor to the community, and not just this community. I've actually launched one before in Houston, Texas, with a program called Impact a Hero. Now, I just happen to have a gigantic belt buckle for that program, and they gave me this belt buckle as an award for launching the Veteran Entrepreneur Library down in Houston, Texas, but also creating a whole system, a whole coaching program for veterans that were in their expansion, not transition. And they were, it was 10 books that they had to read and go through our program. So we're going to be incorporating something like that. So right now, all of these books are very important, right? So I'm going to ask everyone to take a book, but I'm asking you to bring it back after lunch. So what I want you to do is I want you to find a book that's on the shelf that either A, you've read and you love and is really important, of something that's been in your journey. If you have your own books in your bag, please use that book. So find a book that is something that's very powerful to you, or find a book that just grabs you. The thing I love about personal and professional development books is normally you can tell by the title it's something that you need. Right. I'm gonna just shame a book right now. It's a really good book, I'm sure, but it's 16 hours long. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. Like, I get it. The body keeps the score. There's probably a whole lot of trauma and all that stuff that I have. It's like you could probably knock that out in like 2 hours, maybe 3, but 16 hours? Come on, I'm not going to read that whole book. But that title grabs me. So if there's a title that grabs you, please grab it. Or if there's a familiar book that you have, I want you to take it back with you and I want you to take it to lunch. Why? Because people are going to be able to see that visual thing. Oh, I love that book too. Or why'd you grab that book? So I want to create some conversation. And then, so that's step 1, take a book. Make sure you bring it back. Step number 2, I want you to think of 2 questions, and that can be questions from earlier. What are you excited about? What pisses you off? What breaks your heart? What problem are you trying to solve? It could be your favorite question, but not what do you do? And I want you to use that question at lunch. And then I am going to challenge everybody. I want you to also share your social media with whoever you meet with. But I am going to encourage everyone, if there is a local content creator of somebody that you see or watch or know about, let's raise them up and let's share that with somebody that you have lunch with. Now, the final challenge here, after you grab a book, we're going to go to the front room, which is up front where you came in. Find a place. I am going to ask you guys to do something that might be a little uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to please partner up with somebody you don't know, somebody you haven't met before. And have lunch with them and ask those questions, talk about that book, share that little bit of engagement. And then we're going to be coming back in here shortly after 1 o'clock for the final panel discussion to close out the afternoon. And that's the plan from here. So if you would, please grab a book. And then we're going to make our way into the front.
Great job. Hey, thank you. Appreciate you.
Grab this.
So, yeah.